A very good morning to everybody and a warm welcome to the final Cabinet meeting of the first term of BCP Council on Wednesday, the 8th of March 2023. I'm Councillor Phil Broadhead, Leader of the Council and Chairman of Cabinet, and all of those both in the meeting and joining us virtually are very, very welcome indeed. I will move on to, before we move on to the formal agenda itself, I'll move to Sarah for some housekeeping. Thank you.
Thank you. Please note that this meeting of the Cabinet is being recorded by the Council for live broadcast and will be published on the Council website for a minimum of 6 months. Please could everyone present follow these ground rules. Only speak when invited to by the Chairman. If accessing via Teams, always turn on your video function when invited to speak and state your name. Please use your microphones when speaking and mute or turn off your microphone when you are not talking. If you are accessing via Teams and you'd like to speak on an item, please indicate by utilising the raise your hand feature in the bar at the top of the Teams window. For those in the room, if the fire alarm sounds, please exit the building by way of the nearest available signed fire exit route and make your way to the assembly point along Braidley Road, under the flyover or in the surface car park at the front of the building. Finally, please ensure background noise is kept to a minimum and mobile phones and other devices are turned off or switched to silent for the duration of the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So we've got an action-packed agenda today, so we'll try not to dwell too long on any items, although I appreciate that's normally famous last words, particularly with some of the importance of some of the items we're discussing today. So we'll move straight into the agenda, and item number 1 is apologies. Have you received any apologies? No apologies have been received to date. I note that a few colleagues are joining us virtually as well, so we have some Cabinet members in the room, some joining virtual, and you're very welcome. Item number 2 is declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interest which haven't been previously reported? Councillor Toby Johnson.
Thank you, Leader. I was watching. I am a non-voting member of this committee, so when we discuss the BDC paper, item 14, I am a non-voting member. There's no conflict of interest as a board member.
Thank you very much, Councillor Johnson. Councillor Brooks.
Yes, thank you, Leader. Similarly as Toby Johnson, I am a board representative with Bournemouth Development Company in relation to item 14, extension of option execution dates. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. I'm not seeing any other declarations of interest, in which case thank you very much, and we'll move on to item number 3, which is confirmation of minutes. 2 parts of this. First of all, we've got the minutes themselves, and secondly, we've taken the opportunity to provide an update to some of those minutes, particularly around the council's finances, which we'll go on to in just a moment. So first of all, are there any comments or questions around the contents of the minutes as stand? And if not, then we can sign them off as a correct record of the minutes that were held on the 8th of February. All agreed? Great. And in which case we'll now move on to an update. This being the last Cabinet meeting of this term, we thought it'd be a very good opportunity to update on the financial situation and the really quite significant progress that's been made on that, as well as updates that I provided recently to Minister Lee Rowley. So can I move to you, Councillor Green, to introduce this update? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Leader. Well, this is actually going to be my first and last opportunity to speak as the Cabinet member responsible for finance, in which I'm in the caretaker role for the next few years. I think it's very true to say that we are looking here at an approach from the one that took place a few months ago. And that hasn't come about through a desire, but through a necessity to change the framework. The framework has changed under which we work, and we've had to adapt accordingly. Certainly, like many others here, I was around when LGR was first anticipated and then came to fruition, and it was universally accepted that there would be a massive transformation programme, and that would require significant capital receipts to be able to fund it. And that was absolutely universally understood, both within and without the council. It was true then, as it is true now, that the benefits that would be achieved under that transformation programme from a revenue point of view will considerably outweigh the requirements that were there to be able to fund that, both on a capital and interest point of view. And that would be true even if the benefits accrued slower than we originally anticipated. It was also, I believe, universally understood that we would need to borrow to at that stage to finance those transformation changes, which I think it's worth pointing out are now approaching £50 million already, with a great deal more on the horizon. But very early on in that process, there was a change in the way that we would likely be able to borrow, and so when this administration took over, we tried to find a way around that, and I believe that we owe no one an apology for doing so. We were doing so in the best interest of the council taxpayer, of our residents, our visitors, and anybody else who uses the council services. But the fact is that things were changed, and although we had an opportunity, to borrow the money using a slightly innovative method, that was fully compliant with the rules at the time. It was approved, and that was confirmed by CIPFA and by KPMG. However, the rules were changed, and we were unable to go through with borrowing under that route. And the reason that I wanted to bring that up is that I still genuinely believe that that would have been the ideal route to go through. However, the rules did change, and we are required to change because of those. And that's why what you see here is a far more traditional way of being able to raise that capital that's required through the flexible use of capital receipts, rather than the way that we were seeking to do so beforehand. And both the leader and I have met separately with the external auditor. We had discussed with the external auditor and with the Section 151 officer and the chief executive the way that we intend to proceed with these much more traditional ways of raising funds, raising capital, and I believe that that has led to a much more confident approach and form of agreement between all the parties involved in that, including the external auditor. And I'm very grateful for the time that he has put in, and that the Section 151 officer has put in, to be able to meet with us to get to that stage. So once we had decided that we wanted to use the flexible use of capital receipts to be able to fund the transformation programme, we have moved very swiftly indeed. We identified that 19.9 million would be required to fund the transformation programme for this year. 1.9 million of that we were able to get easily, because it was the unapplied capital receipts from year 21 to 22 that had come in, with a resultant need now to find 18 million to do so. Officers and members have worked very effectively together at pace to be able to identify the suitable assets for disposal. And before we hear, as we have from some members and others in the past, that this is selling off the crown jewels, I think it's really important to identify that almost all of the assets that have been identified for sale are ones that we would no longer even be allowed to buy under the current regimes, because they are outside our core business. And so we've been able to identify not just those assets, but also the realisable values that come from them. And as I can report now, in fact, they have been achieving greater than those values that were assessed, which has made it even easier for us to achieve our objectives, which is to avoid having to borrow from government under a capitalisation direction in the way that so many other local authorities are being forced to do, and with all the restrictions that come from that. So, as I said, we have a gap of 18 million that we need to be able to find to fund the transformation for year 22-23. Our best estimate at the moment is that by 31st of March, we will actually receive 21.1 million rather than the 18 million that we first anticipated. And that 3.1 million will then allow us to carry forward the requirement and reduce the requirement for 24-25. So we are in a very good situation on that. There is also a much smaller requirement through the Children's Services, which is identified in this paper, where approximately 1.9 million we believed we were going to need to find from other sources other than the financial use of capital receipts to fund part of that programme that's going forward. And that's because of the rules that are set in place for what you can use FUCR for and what you can't use FUCR for. That's under review, and we will be looking further into that, or looking into that at the future. But if it does turn out that we cannot use financial capital receipts to be able to pay for that, then there are alternatives, which include potentially looking at some of the additional surplus that it looks like we will be able to generate when we look at the outturn that's coming for the current financial year 22-23 in our revenue account, which at the moment stands at 10.6 million, and we believe that the likelihood is that we may be able to move up on there again because of the fantastic work that's taken place right the way across the council in consultation with cabinet members. We've been able to do that at pace. We've been able to do that in response to the change in the requirements that have come through from government, and I think it's the right way that we should be working together. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Green. I'm happy to second this item as well. I think you've given a very comprehensive update of how all the work that, again, thank you in particular, that has been undertaken recently, but also the journey that we've been on as well. Colleagues will note that in addition to that paper, I sent an update to Minister Lee Rowley on Friday. And again, I'd like to put on record my thanks to the entire DLUC team and Minister Rowley in particular for their engagement on this issue as well, and their pragmatic assistance. You know, I think everybody is pretty clear that we all want us to succeed here. I think echoing some of your comments, I would like to thank the entire team, both Cabinet and officers, for reacting at pace with that change in legislation that took place last year. I think to put into, and I've outlined this in the letter, the scale of the challenge we faced last year was already quite great. The inflationary pressures that we're facing alone added an additional £54 million unexpected onto the cost of providing council services. That was already a challenge, but we got ahead of that in the summer and left ourselves in a position because of that rigour with a £10 million surplus to help with the revenue budget for this year. But of course, that capital budget with that change in legislation meant that we had to act very quickly as well. And I think the fact that we took decisions very, very quickly to dispose of industrial assets, as Councillor Green said, we wouldn't have been able to buy. The fact that they've moved ahead of our valuation expectations, the fact that we are now hopefully on track to bank all of those before the end of the year, means that within that letter I could give relative confidence to the Minister and the Department that we will not need any very welcome government backup assistance, as I would call it, and also that we are in a strong position to be able to avoid having to ask for any assistance next year as well. And I think it's an important message to put out there that we've reacted with rigour and confidence to those financial challenges. And I think the strong message to any of those that may hear about any purported financial struggles of BCP Council, reflect on that. We're now in the position that with all of those headwinds, we have reacted, not needing any government support, with a surplus this year, with a plan for next year, and also with a medium-term funding gap of around £12 million over the next 3-4 years, which for a council of our size, is really positive. Clearly, we've still got challenges. We've got issues like many councils with the high needs block, and we need a national solution to those. close. But I think in terms of what is within our control, we now leave this term in a really strong financial position and a plan for the future. So really pleased to provide that update. Again, thank you to all of those that Councillor Green has thanked. Thank you for the auditors for their positive engagement on this issue as well. And actually, indeed, thank you to all councillors, including those from other parties that worked closely with me at the last budget so that we could pass a budget that had a number of compromises in. I think that's important in terms of working forward as well. What we've also done in that letter is give an update to the department that we've asked the Chief Executive to undertake our own assurance and governance review in-house. That may well satisfy the requirement from the department for that, particularly as we may no longer need the capitalisation direction. But even if they still want to do their own, that's very welcome, and hopefully that report will serve as a basis for that, as well as giving us a little bit of self-reflection of areas that you know, in this first term, whereas a new authority finding its feet, there are areas that we could improve as well. So thank you to everybody on that, and I hope that's a welcome update as the kind of final financial update of this term. And again, thank you to Councillor Green for your work on all of that, as well as Adam Richards, Graham, and the rest of the team as well. I think that is an item just for noting, so we're all happy to note that financial update. Agreed? Great, brilliant. Thank you very much. In which case, that closes the item on the minutes, and we will move to the agenda proper. We have recommendations. First of all, we've got public issues. So could I go to Sarah for any public issues?
Thank you. So we have one public question this morning relating to agenda item 12 and one public statement relating to agenda item 9. And the question comes from Mr. Sprackling.
So can I invite Mr. Sprackling up to ask your question, which I believe is on the Beach Road item, and I have a response for you. Yep. Thank you, John.
For those who don't know me, my name is John Sprackling, and I am the president of the Branksome Park and Camphor Cliffs Residents Association, an active association with around 2,500 members. Cabinet should be aware that in 2017, Poolborough Council sought to remove the deed of release and covenant dated 19th June 1931. This was referred to the Upper Tribunal Lands Chamber on 23rd May 2018, which rejected the council, that's Poole Council's request for a stay of proceedings for a period of 6 months, and awarded costs to those that voted against, awarded costs against the council in favour of residents who objected. The association believes that any business case should not be approved until the covenant issue has been addressed and concluded. Please confirm that the business case will be withdrawn until the matter of the covenant has been resolved. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Sprackling, for your question. I've asked our council officers and legal team to prepare a response, which I will read out now and provide a copy to you as well. The process for dealing with the historic restrictive covenants affecting the site and the relevant legislation is fully set out in pages 63 to 69 of the Cabinet report. In 2018, the former Borough of Poole Council withdrew tribunal proceedings to discharge the restrictive covenants on Beach Road, following receipt of Council's advice confirming that the Council should instead use its statutory powers of appropriation to override any covenants that may impede development. Appropriation is a legal means by which land held by a local authority is transferred from one legal function to another. Appropriation for planning purposes will also convert the rights of beneficiaries of the covenants into a right to receive financial compensation following the grant of planning permission and implementation of the development causing the interference in the rights. In due course, the Council will place an advert for 2 consecutive weeks in the local paper declaring its intention to appropriate, to which which comments and objections can be made. In reaching a decision, Council will be asked to carefully consider any objections, and an assessment of those received will be reported to Cabinet with reasoned responses for consideration. It is proposed that a full business case and Cabinet report will follow in early 2024, considering these issues and seeking approval to appropriate part of the site for planning purposes prior to the grant of planning permission and subsequent disposal. As this project currently is in the outline business case stage, and for the reasons outlined above, where further processes will be undertaken and further consultation given to this matter, it's recommended that the Council authorises Future Places to progress with the production of a full business case. And I'll provide that answer to you because I know you have a residents meeting shortly, John. Brilliant. Thank you very much for attending.
Thank you.
Sarah, can we move on to I think we've got a statement.
We do indeed. We have a statement in relation to agenda item 9, and the statement comes from Mr. John Ainsworth.
Thank you. I'll invite John up to read his statement, and then I'm sure we'll be addressing that as part of the discussion today. Thank you for joining us, John.
My name is John Ainsworth, and I'm chairman of Churches Together in Poole. The submission we make to the Cabinet today is as follows. The 9/22 Cabinet decision aimed to install new cremators in Poole by March 2024. Only option 3 meets that. The CDS report does not say when a new generation of electric cremators will be available to install in Poole. They will be untried and untested technology. DFW cremators have already been installed in 3 crematoria across the UK and are therefore already tried and tested. The lead time for purchase of the DFW electric cremators is 9 to 12 months. Appendix 1 shows that the installation of electric cremators in Poole can be funded over 15 years. Thank you.
Thank you very much, John, and thank you to all of the work that you, along with others, have been doing on this, and hopefully we'll have a positive response to you later on in the Cabinet meeting. So thank you for your statement. We'll now move to item 5, which are recommendations from the Overview and Scrutiny Committees. And I think we have... Do we have any recommendations that aren't on the agenda?
We have a recommendation which relates to an item on the agenda, but we don't have any recommendations coming from the scrutiny committees outside of those that are on the agenda today.
Great, thank you very much, Sarah. In which case, we'll take the item related to the appropriate item when we come to that. Thank you very much. What we'll now do, in a slight change to the order, because we've got a Cabinet member that needs to attend another event, I'll be moving item number 23 to the next part of the agenda. So I'm just seeing a hand on this. Is that I've got Councillor Edwards. I think Councillor Edwards wants to come in on a particular item. Councillor Edwards, I'll bring you in on that item if that's okay, so that we can keep the flow. So I'll bring you in on the appropriate items. I think it's about the daycare item.
It is. Did you
brilliant. I'll bring you in at that point.
So later on in the agenda, you mean?
Yeah, if that's all right. That way it all ties together, so it's not out of order. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Right, we'll now move on to item number 23, which is the tender for fly tipping and littering and the update on progress, which is one that we requested to be brought through to the next Cabinet. We've got Councillor Bobby Dove joining us virtually, so I'll formally introduce this item and then pass straight over to Councillor Dove to provide that update. Thank you, Councillor Dove.
Thank you. I think we've all heard the process and the pilot that we've had. I think there's been 3 papers to Cabinet, including scrutiny meetings. So what I will do is I'll update on the littering contract, which, whilst it's gone to scrutiny, is probably the new part of the piece of work that we've done. And so, as requested by Cabinet, I'm really pleased to bring this update paper back here to talk about the procurement for our littering contract. This contract is part of a wider programme in which we really tackle and get down to resolving the issues that matter to our residents, to our businesses and to our visitors. From fly tipping to antisocial behaviour to dealing with fly camping, we have shown that we really listen to those who are concerned about the behaviours of others. And as an administration, this Conservative administration will actually do something about it. It's all about actions and not words. Therefore, as part of the Cabinet paper in November, we went out to tender seeking an interest in those who wish to contract for a littering procurement and contract that we could bring into BCP. The organisation that we have decided that would best fit our aims and ambitions and also the culture of our council in tackling the war on waste was WISE. We obviously know WISE from the work they've done through their fly tipping contract, and as previously stated, complaints are low and they fit the ethos and the high standards that we wish to maintain as an organisation. But this contract is significant not simply because of the littering we've seen in recent years, but because of the climate emergency declaration that we've all signed up to. So I'll not use today to lecture on this matter, but when it takes up to 10 years for a sweet wrapper to decompose and results in releasing microplastics into our watercourses, it's no longer appropriate to be bystanders to littering. So as a Conservative administration, we've decided now's the time to move away from meaningless good intentions, words and discussions that we've heard with the previous administration. And instead, we're going to take action and ensure that the litter bugs are deterred from ruining our beautiful towns. This response to the contract's been really well received by residents and individuals across the BCP area. And what's such example is an email that I received from Emma Martineau, who is the chair of the BH9 business community. And she wrote, "We at BH9 business community are delighted to hear that WISE have been awarded a contract to carry out littering enforcement. This is something that we have been advocating for years. It's short and it's sweet, but it does make it clear that we have listened and we have made provisions to ensure that we meet the needs of those who live and work across the conurbation." Finally, discussions have taken place with the Council's Destination and Culture team in preparation for the anticipated start of the holiday season in spring 2023, which is only a few weeks away now. And we're expanding upon new and existing educational media campaigns for tourists, with this new contract acting in part as a deterrent to people leaving litter. I believe that we have Matt King also on the line if there's any questions that need to be asked.
Brilliant. Thank you very much for that, Councillor Dove. And I believe Nicola Green, you're happy to second this item?
Yes, I am.
Thank you very much. I'll move to colleagues not on on the formal cabinet to make any comments or questions. Councillor Allen, Hazel Allen.
I'd just like to commend the work that the portfolio holder has done with this and the team. And I just want to say, excellent, we're making some proper changes and we're taking action. And I think that is exactly what we need to be doing for our residents. I think it demonstrates what we've achieved as a Conservative administration. I think that unfortunately a lot of these issues end up in the too difficult box. Littering has definitely been one of those, lots of back and forth discussions. How can we manage this? And I do think that in the end, sometimes you just have to bite the bullet and take action and then manage any issues. And a very good example of this is something that I pushed for many years, which was us managing belongings that were left unattended on the high street and having them removed, stored for collection. And we discussed this back and forth for months, and there were issues that were brought forward and discussed. And in the end, we had to bite the bullet along with the Police and Crime Commissioner to take action. We took action. We've already had feedback that has significantly improved the look and feel of the town centres. And the issues that have come forward, well, quite frankly, we've not had issues. All the issues that we were concerned about, we've really not had any pushback on. And I think what we'll find with the littering, that actually once we start taking action and people start seeing improvements, the issues that come forward will be minimal and we will be able to manage them. And I think it's, instead of just discussing problems and coming up with all the issues that might come forward, I think sometimes you just have to take action on the sometimes too difficult things that we think we can't do, and then manage them as we go forward. So I just want to say excellent, good action. This is exactly what we need to be doing. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Allen, for those words. Do we have any other comments or questions from those either online or not? I've got Councillor Butler, Diana Butler.
Thank you. I'd just like to add, hopefully WISE will include checking on takeaway premises that they empty their bins regularly, because lots of litter can fly up in windy weather and spread everywhere, and also tarpaulins on lorries that are carrying lots of materials, because we're seeing along our roads recently that a lot of litter is being blowing into the verges of the main roads particularly. So hopefully that's included in the WISE action.
Yeah, thank you very much, Councillor Butler. Any other comments or questions before I sum up? I'm not seeing any. I'd just like to add a final. I completely agree with Councillor Butler's points, and absolutely will be taken into consideration. First of all, to Councillor Allen, thank you for adding all of those other points, and again, thank you to your work on the rough sleeping initiative and targeting aggressive beggars and proactively trying to help those that are suffering from rough sleeping and getting them to engage by all means. I think the recent statistics that we've seen, I think only in the last 6 months, seeing our count go from in the 60s of the number of rough sleepers on our streets in the BCP region to only 20 is a real credit to the work that you've been doing and leading, but also the wider team, and that strategic joined up approach, making sure that things that are in the too difficult to do box are taken out of that box and dealt with accordingly. So thank you very much for the work that you do as well. And again, to pay credit to Councillor Bobby Dove for again tackling this issue head on. When we brought this to Cabinet previously, we had said that, I had said that we wanted to declare war on fly tipping and littering. We shouldn't have to. People shouldn't be doing it to start with. And I think what this policy does, and the work that's going to go into this, is that two-pronged approach, stopping people and directly targeting those that are littering our streets completely unnecessarily, and making sure that they are dealt with accordingly, and then hopefully providing that deterrent alongside all of the other ways that we're trying to encourage people as well. But we are on that war on fly tipping, littering, and I'm absolutely committed that we are going to win that war, and I think this is a really positive step on that as well. So thank you very much for that work and that really positive update. Right, colleagues, we'll now move on. All those that are, Councillor Dunlop, you wanted to come in?
I'm sorry, Chairman, I almost missed my slot, leader. It was, yes, I just wanted to pick up a note from Emma Martineau. She is the chairman of BH9 Traders, which covers all of Wimborne Road, so that's Winton Traders and Moordown Traders. And it is something that I go to their monthly meetings, and it's something that they raise every month about what we're going to do about it. And I think that really that we should congratulate ourselves for actually taking it on board and saying, you've asked us about this, told us about the difficulties that you have in the high street, you've told us about the rubbish that is being left by people, and we've done something about it. And when I in fact met her on Sunday to do some other lamppost assessment along Wimborne Road, and when I told her about this, that she was absolutely ecstatic and delighted. So really, yeah, absolutely well done. Thanks.
Thank you very much for that contribution. I sincerely hope people will see the real impact of this as well, because that's the important thing, that people see that we're not just tackling it, but it's actually making a real difference as well. So thank you to all your comments and questions. Cabinet is just asked to note this item. Are we all happy to note the updates and the progress? Agreed. That is unanimous. Thank you very much. We'll now move back to the agenda as set out in the order, and move to agenda item 6, which I'll be proposing, and that's a corporate peer challenge progress report. Colleagues will all have engaged with the corporate peer challenge, which we first undertook in November 2021, and on the back of that did a feedback report which we took forward in April 2022, and we're really pleased to welcome the peer team back for a one-day visit to review progress and update in December of 2022. As somebody that works as an LGA peer and regularly does this for other councils, I just think we all find this process so beneficial. Sometimes you don't know what you don't know, and having a fresh pair of eyes to look at things and make areas for suggestions for improvement, but also to highlight areas where you are doing well and you should keep on that track is absolutely valuable. And I think the way that the LGA way undertakes this, not as an audit but as a critical friend, is one that I would strongly recommend, and particularly to all those other councils. The Corporate Peer Challenge is a great piece of work that enables you to take a long, hard look at yourself and to work with colleagues across the country to share experience and advice as well. So this is a brief report which updates the findings of that update from the Corporate Peer Challenge. The report sets out in detail the items for noting. A number of in item 6, it reflects on some of the findings of that, saying that in particular the council leadership are actively engaged in the new health and social care landscape, and that's very positive. And indeed, as the new leader, I'm sitting already on the integrated care system board, and I do think that system is really productive to tackle the thorny issue of making sure we've got a health and social care system that is absolutely joined up, and really keen to see that going. It also signals the work that we're doing in our children's services and how we're working on that improvement journey and making real progress. Highlights the progress we're also making in the climate change ambitions, and we'll hear a little bit more about that later on today. Highlights in particular, again, the summer response that we've done and the leadership we've shown in that area, making sure that when we do get those visitors that descend on our area, that we're now doing so positively, we're ready for them, and it's a positive experience for everybody. And also comments on things like the improvements we've made in the culture of the organisation, etc., etc. So I'd just like to put on record our thanks to all of those peers that engaged in that process, and indeed any new actions that we will need to take on board of that are detailed and will be actioned accordingly. So happy to formally propose, and I'll move to Deputy Leader Nicola Green to second.
Thank you, Leader. Very happy to second, and nothing to add to that very comprehensive introduction.
Thank you very much. I love the slight passive aggressiveness of all of that. It's like being at home. Colleagues, are there any other questions or comments on this? I'll go to colleagues not joining us in the room first, and I'm not seeing any hands. In which case I'll move to colleagues that are in the room. And again, thank you to all of those that are engaged in the process, not just Cabinet members, colleagues across the council from all parties, and the officer team as well. It can sometimes seem a little bit of a burden, but actually the outcome of this is really, really helpful and has a lot of utility. In which case I'll move straight to the recommendation, which is recommended that Cabinet receives the Corporate Peer Challenge Progress Report and provides any comments. All those that are happy to accept that. Great. And again, that's unanimous. Thank you very much indeed. We'll now move to item number 7, which is the community asset transfer policy. Just bear with me, I'll get it up on my screen. So I'll be proposing this one as well, and the idea of this is to bring together a framework and a process for how applications can be submitted, assessed and determined when the council will be looking to transfer assets from its ownership into other partners' ownership as well. And indeed it follows on very nicely to the next paper where we'll see this framework in action. Again, thank you to all of those that have put a lot of time and effort into this. Always as part of the local government reorganisation process, there will be a natural redistribution of assets where appropriate to other partners, particularly town and parish councils, but also we're always pleased to work with voluntary and community groups that may well wish to request the use of assets to help in their aspirations as well. So the recommendations in front of us is that we note that this policy is the first of several asset related policies to be drafted as part of the wider asset management plan developed for the council, that we adopt the asset transfer policy itself as outlined in the paper, and that we also note that each council asset transfer application will be considered by the asset investment panel. We've already got a panel that considers other aspects of assets, so it seems the appropriate place to feed into that. And of course, if that panel approve, that transfer will be progressed in accordance with the council's financial regulations, which quite often means either cabinet or council approval as well. The content of the rest of the paper is pretty clear. And again, I'd like to thank all of the officers that have worked. It's taken quite a bit of time to pull this together. because, you know, I think it's really important that we have clarity and a framework in place so that we can both help to assist in those situations where an asset transfer is absolutely the right thing to do and appropriate, and get the roadblocks out of the way and the red tape, but also to make sure that we're really clear about areas where it might not be appropriate as well, particularly those that bring in income for the council or can affect the council's finances. So I'm happy to propose, and I think my colleague Jane Kelly will be seconding. Councillor Kelly.
Oh, thank you very much, Leader, and absolutely very happy to second this paper. We have some really strong community groups and organisations throughout BCP. They're really diverse in their size and focus, but they're all extremely important to our aspirations to celebrate what is a strong and vibrant within our communities as we work in an asset-based way with those residents. Buildings and a place to call home are so important to all of these groups, and some of them are resilient enough to take on their own building, which is often enables fundraising to a higher level, as it just demonstrates sustainability to funders, as well as the ability to increase cash flow by offering smaller groups spaces to rent within those buildings. We recognise this, and so this policy, which is part of the Community Asset Plan, gives the framework and process by which these assets can be transferred in a way which benefits both the organisations and the council, and absolutely supports our vibrant communities aim. The process might be quite frightening for some organisations who have not previously been able to even contemplate taking on a building, and for some it will not be the right time to do that. However, each transfer will be considered on a case-by-case basis, and advice will be given to ensure that the necessary support and constructive advice will be given. I know that there will be some organisations who will jump at this opportunity. For others, a lot more thought and growth will be appropriate. But this policy is the start of something new and exciting for those voluntary organisations who wish to grow and thrive. Therefore, I'm very happy, Leader, to second this paper.
Thank you very much for seconding, Councillor Kelly. And again, thank you to all the work that you've done championing ABCD, asset-based community development, because I think this is a prime example of how we can think differently and use our assets to work with the community to facilitate better outcomes for everybody. And I agree with your sentiments, and I hope that the framework here gives clarity as to that process and makes it not frightening for those where it's absolutely the right thing to do. I'll now move to colleagues that are joining us online first, and I've got Councillor Jude Butt and then Councillor Nigel Brooks. Jude.
Thank you, Miss. But obviously we need to ensure that it can be landed. And Councillor Kelly rather knocked the nail on the head when she talked about the complexity of this type of the applications, etc., and the transfers and how they would go through. Now, it needs to be absolutely simplified. It needs to be something that we don't just have on paper, which is there. It must actually be able to be used and implemented. And community members, be they a single person wishing to do something or a huge conglomerate, they must have the same support and they must also have the same opportunity. So I would like to have assurance that this is to be a very, very simplified matter. And obviously there are legalities, etc., which are complex in themselves. But we would need to have an undertaking that this would be done in such a way that it actually can be taken advantage of and is not just a document that sits on our shelves. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Butt. Councillor Nigel Brooks.
Yes, thank you, Leader. I did provide feedback in the consultation to the asset transfer policy. And it's been mentioned there are some areas which some applicants may want some guidance, some assistance, but what it does underline is the seriousness of the take-on of any transfer to another party. I think it's also notable that we have localism, certainly through parish and town councils, which actually have precepts which actually can be properly invested sort of outside BCP's remit to actually improve, sustain, and to develop the assets that then they receive. And also that's then linked to the benefit of the community. So I think it actually is a sort of a good fit across the conurbation to actually have this policy to enable people to consider such a transfer. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Fully agree, Councillor Brooks. Councillor Duff, Bobby Duff.
Thank you. I really welcome this policy and the framework that's been set out in this paper. It's a huge step forward, and it's hugely beneficial with some real positive impacts for our communities. I mean, let's be honest, one of the main concerns about LGR was the voices of those within our 3 towns will be lost. But this paper really demonstrates the opposite. It's an example of devolution where much local assets can be transferred to local parishes, town councils, community groups for their future stewardship by those who know and understand their areas the best. And I really cannot speak to this paper without a really big shout out to Access Dorset, who are based in my ward at the Bridge as part of the Littledown estate. I know that they have been asking for years to be able to take over that building so that they can move it forward with the needs of those people who use that building in mind. So this will be really welcome not only to them, but to lots of other groups right across the conurbation who can really start working of moving forward with the work that they want to do in order to support our communities, our residents and our businesses. Really welcome the paper. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much, Councillor Dove. Do I have any further comments or questions from those on Cabinet in the room? I'm not seeing any, in which case I'll just address a few of those comments, many of which I completely agree with. Councillor Butt, I think you're absolutely right. This process needs to be simple, but I think also, as Councillor Kelly said, it needs to come with support as well. If we are wanting to enable this, we want to make it as accessible for those where it is the right decision to take, but to overlabour the S's, I think it also has to come with some strategy, and that was the aim of putting this document together, in that, you know, we still have an obligation as a council to make sure that we are facilitating where possible, but we're also doing it in a joined up way. And I've got real confidence that the policy we have now gives the simplicity for those that want to engage, gives the support for where it's appropriate, and also covers us on the strategy and having a more strategic view of how we use our assets to provide the best outcome for people. So, you know, real credit to all those involved. I'm not seeing any further comments or questions, in which case I will ask Cabinet whether they're supportive to move forward with recommendations. All those in favour? Great, thank you very much indeed. That is again unanimous. We'll now move on to agenda item 8, which, if by magic, talks about this policy in action, almost, colleagues, as if it was planned. And I'll move to colleague Councillor Green to introduce and propose this item.
Thank you, Leader. It is indeed very timely that we organise this to follow directly on from passing the policy, although clearly these two things have been running in parallel for quite some years. We're really pleased to be supporting the aspirations of Christchurch Town Council and to transfer these play areas as we move forward. Just for members and anybody watching online, the 3 areas that we're considering today are the Barrack Road Recreation Ground, just south of Barrack Road, very close to Christchurch Town Centre, the skate park just behind the Two Rivers Beat car park, and Waterman's Park in Somerford, just by St Joseph's School. It's also worth remembering that Christchurch Town Council do collect precept, a local tax on residents for exactly this type of thing. So if residents are wondering what their £46 per head on a Band D property is spent on, this is one of those things, and it's long been the aspiration of town and parish councils to be operating those services which impact very closely on residents. I think it was very helpful, some of the questions that came out actually in the previous paper, because this paper does cover some of those things, and I think the working relationship between the town council and officers has really developed through this process, and I would thank all concerned for bringing it forward. The other thing that I would like to speak to is that the recommendations, when first drafted, didn't quite speak to the council's financial regulations, and therefore, while options, if I can draw everybody's attention to the recommendations, recommendation A, B and D remain as they are, that they are all recommendations to Cabinet, but given the work that's been undertaken as background, item C will require a council decision. So it is therefore recommended that Cabinet ask council to agree. to the transfer of the assets. I think that pretty much covers it. Thank you, Lita.
Thank you very much, Councillor Green. I'm happy to formally second that, and again, great to see this policy in action. And thank you to those that have been working to make this a reality as well. I'll move to colleagues joining us virtually first to see whether there are any comments or questions on this item, and I'm not seeing any. In which case, I will move to colleagues in Cabinet in the room. Yeah, I've got Susan Zeiss that may wish to add something. Susan?
I beg your pardon, Leader. I thought you were going to the vote, and just before you do, I would like Sarah Colwick to read out the amended recommendation. Thank you.
Absolutely, one step ahead. I was exactly what I was planning to do. So thank you for the nudge, just in case. Colleagues in the room, not seeing any further comments or questions. In which case, I would like to ask Sarah to read out the full amended recommendation, taking into account the necessary delegation to full council for the final decisions. So Sarah, if you could read that out for clarity, that'd be great.
Okay, so the recommendation will be as follows. It is recommended that Cabinet A considers the outcome of the public consultation set out in paragraphs 7 and 8 of this report and notes the requirements of the dispatch procedure in paragraph 10. B, agrees to transfer to Christchurch Town Council the freehold ownership of assets Barrack Road Recreation Park Ground, Two Rivers Meet Skate Park, Waterman's Skate Park under the terms, conditions and legal arrangements set out. It is recommended that Council agrees to transfer these assets at below the market value under the provisions of the Local Government Act 1972, General Disposal Consent, England 2003. And it is recommended that Cabinet agrees the transfer of the obligations arising from the Fields in Trust designation for Waterman's Park Skate Park to Christchurch Town Council.
Thank you very much, Sarah, for that clarity. All colleagues happy with the amended recommendation, and I'll therefore go to the vote. All those in favour? Great, and again, that's unanimous. Thank you very much indeed. Colleagues, we'll now move on to agenda item number 9, which I will propose, which is the pool crematorium detailed options for replacement of the cremators. Colleagues will recall back in September 2022, we made the decision firmly that we would be looking to replace the cremators at pool, and we asked for an options paper to look within the next 6 months to how we could options that were available to formalise that replacement with the aim at the time of getting on and doing that as soon as possible. I think there's a strong, certainly local feeling that a decision needs to be made on this. It needs to be decided at pace and not just thinking about it a little bit more. And I'm really pleased that we took that decision at the time. What we've then done with this report in front of us is explore the 4 different options that are, according to the experts, available to us. Although it's really 3. Option 1 is not to do anything, but of course we've made that commitment previously that we would be looking to reinstall the cremators at pool. Option number 2 is to invest in 2 gas cremators, pretty tried and tested technology. We know what we're getting. It's what we've currently had, but of course mindful of our future-proofing climate aspirations as well, has negatives. Option 3, which is to invest in 2 electric cremators, ones that are already on the market, tried and tested, and could be installed relatively at pace, albeit with some potential amendments to the building and a lead-in time into the procurement of those, or option 4, to invest in the latest electric cremator technology, which provisionally are due to be released to the UK market in the summer of next year, which would be smaller, perhaps a little bit more energy efficient, but again has that delay. The paper in front of us goes through all of those different options. We'll have a discussion in Cabinet as to the pros and cons, and hopefully make a decision shortly. Before I do that, I will bring in, first of all, Councillor White to second the paper prior to the discussion, and then I will also invite the Chairman of the Place Overview and Scrutiny Board, Councillor Gabriel, because we do have a formal recommendation on this item, which came through from the long discussion and productive discussion that took place at his board last week. So first of all, I'll go to Councillor White to second, and then I'll move.
Happy to second.
Happy to second. Thank you very much. And then, I also will point out that I have received a late statement from Councillor Andy Hadley as well on this item, and just to give assurances to Councillor Hadley, that has been circulated to Cabinet, and we are all taking that into consideration as well. So thank you to Councillor Hadley for your further views after scrutiny on that as well. And that is absolutely part of the decision-making process as well. So I'll now move to Councillor Sean Gabriel and to introduce the recommendation that came through from scrutiny. Thank you, Sean.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Can you hear me okay?
Perfectly, Sean.
Perfect. Okay, yeah, just thanks to you. Thanks for having our comments and receiving our recommendation. Obviously, the scrutiny committee had a good look at all the options. Obviously, as you've already said, options 1 and 2 were completely discounted. Most of the debates centred on options 3 and 4. As you can see from the recommendation, the committee decided to go for option 3 because we thought there's a risk to the delay if we waited for option 4. So our recommendations to Cabinet is to opt for option 3 to get the new cremators back on that site for next year.
Thank you very much for that update, Sean, and again for chairing that meeting and the debate that happened during that. I think it's a really good example of how scrutiny should be done. I'll now move to colleagues that are joining us not on Cabinet online to add their views, and I'll move first to Councillor Mike Brooke. Mike.
Fine. Thank you, Chair. Can I just check that you can hear me okay?
Yes, perfectly, Mike. Thanks for joining us.
Fine, thank you. First of all, can I say how much I actually welcome the decision to move forward with the purchase of cremators for Poole crematorium. It's something that our residents certainly want, and I know that it will also add resilience to the whole service with Bournemouth cremators on the, I won't say on the verge of being replaced, but certainly have a relatively short future life before they need to be looked at again. So I think this is a good move. However, I think there are some important issues that we need to consider with both options 3 and 4. We'd certainly discussed them at the overview last week, and it wasn't a unanimous decision. There were supporters for option 4. What I want to say is that both options actually carry quite significant risks, and I'm a little bit concerned, if I quote the proverb, more haste, less speed. It isn't always best to go for the quickest option in this instance. It's a good opportunity to look at new technology, new innovation, and an opportunity for the council to actually be innovative in this particular instance. And I don't think time-wise there is actually going to be very much difference in terms of completion dates. There are risks in terms of where the option 3 cremators are coming from, in terms of actual speed at which the orders can be fulfilled, in terms of transportation and exporting to this country. We know that businesses are having great difficulties across the channel, getting things from Europe here. Equally, there are risks with option 4. So I've seen Councillor Hadley's statement, and I'm quite happy actually to support and ask that you consider doing business cases, either 2 separate business cases, one for option 3, one for option 4, or doing a combined business case that looks at both in detail, because clearly you are not going to move forward with either option without business cases, and it does seem to me that it would be the most sensible thing to have business cases for both these. One, because you, as has been said, one can be done a little more quickly than the other. The other has very, very important options for the council relating to climate emergency and the environment, as well as not having to rebuild or modify the crematorium itself, which option 3 has. So with those unknowns and risks, I think it would be wise to do a joint business case for that included comparison of option 3 with option 4 or 2 separate business cases. So I'll leave that thought with you and listen to the debate with interest. Many thanks.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for your points there, Councillor Brooke. And I completely agree. Sometimes more haste, less speed, but that can be more dither and delay. And I think we are now at the point where I think we have to make a firm decision. And my strong feeling on this is another decision point later on about considering again and again and again. Does just look like we're not making the decision, and every day that goes by is a day without the cremators at pools. So there's no easy choices on this, but again, I thank you for your words on this. I also forgot to mention at the beginning, again, thank you to John Ainsworth and the Churches Together group. I think they've been pretty consistent. They want us to get on with this at pace. Even before scrutiny on the 28th of February, we had an email to support option 3 and move forward, but I'll listen to the rest of the as well. So I'll move on to I've got Councillor Allen and Diana Butler, and then I'll move to colleagues in the room. Councillor Allen.
To agree with you and say that I think we can't keep putting off decisions. I think we do need to go for option 3, and that's the one that I would be supporting. It gives certainty, because I think every time you start looking at something new, the certainty around the costs of that, the timelines for bringing that forward and getting it installed, everything just keeps getting pushed back and pushed back. And I think it's very clear from residents and from action groups that that's not what people want. They want us to get on, make a plan, a certain plan, with some proper timelines so that we know that we are able to deliver this, and this is a commitment that we've made. So I think we just need to go forward and go for option 3. There's always going to be new technologies coming forward, new generations of electronic cremators. There's always going to be something new. It's a bit like getting a new laptop every week, isn't it? So I think in the end, we just need to get on with it and act accordingly and listen to our residents. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Allen. So I've got 2 more speakers joining us online on this, Councillor Butler, and then Councillor Barron. So I'll go to Diana Butler first. Thanks, Diana.
Thank you, Leader. Yes, I'd like to agree with Councillor Allen. A lot of discussion went on with the ONS the other day about this, and also Churches Together want to support option 3. The concern about option 4 is it's new technology, and it might not be fully efficient or tested. So it's better to have something that really, and people are desperate to have something as quick as possible because we've been without it for a long time. So lots of residents really want this. Thank you.
Thank you, Diana. Thank you for your input and suggestion there as well. Councillor Butt and then Councillor Barron. Jude.
Yes, thank you. Yes, there's long history on this, long story. First brought to with regard to engagement arm. Churches Together and many others reached out with regard to this, that these cremators needed to be put in very quickly. So this was quickly taken to scrutiny and Cabinet and Council, and we're back 6 months later, proposal being that we have a paper within 6 months that we could look at with regard to taking this forward. There were 2 options which were favourable. That was option 3 and option 4. At the time, I was encouraged by Churches Together and others to support option 4, which indeed I did. Since hearing from Churches Together, since the scrutiny, they in fact had reconsidered and they would be content with option 3. What's important here is the flexibility of that ability for members of the public and interested parties to be able to move flexibly with what's happening. And this has been a case in point. And it is a case of listening to what residents needs. The fact that people don't want to have to drag their loved ones across to the Bournemouth crematorium at the most difficult time of their lives. They want to have a one-stop service and then be able to lay their loved ones to rest all in one place at the most difficult time of their lives. I don't see that delaying this any further is of any great benefit to the people who have said to us, the residents, anybody you ask, anywhere you seek advice about this, is please can we do this, and please can we do this quickly. So I would happily support option 3 because it is what the residents are supporting, and I support my residents. Thank you, Mr.
Yes,
Chairman.
thank you very much, Councillor Button. Thank you for your work on this as well. I feel harmony and unity breaking out on this issue, which is really welcome. So I'll move to Councillor Barron. Steve.
Thank you, Leader. Chairman, we need more words. I'm so pleased that this is finally coming forward. It's well overdue. It's essential that Poole has his crematorium fixed. We just need to get on with this, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much, Steve. I'm not seeing any other hands up from colleagues not joining us virtually, so I'll now move to colleagues on Cabinet in the room, and I've got Councillor White. Mike.
Yeah, thank you, Leader. I mean, we've heard very clearly from the faith community in Poole who support option 3. It's really important that we do get on with this. We've also heard that the best that is currently available is indeed option 3. So happy to support option 3, and let's just get on with it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mike. Councillor Apton, Karen.
Yes, thank you. Councillor Allen kind of stole my thunder. I was actually going to liken it to one of these new phones, which everybody seems to sort of have every couple of months, unlike me, who's had mine for several years, and I hope my husband is listening to this. But I absolutely support option 3, and I think we need to make a decision, and this cabinet is known for being decisive, and let's leave the woolly kick the can down the road option today, please, to go for option 3. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Karen. I think we need to add a new recommendation for a new phone from John as option number, a recommendation F as well. So that is duly noted. Colleagues, I'm hearing loud and clear, and particularly in reference to the strong will of those involved in the community as well, that on balance, option 3 seems to be the preferred option. I mean, let's remember that the reason that we are in this position, this administration coming in, the crematorium did stop providing cremations in-house, and I'm really pleased that one of the last decisions that will be made is not just a firm commitment, but putting formal motions in place to look at restoring those. I do also welcome that there will be new technology coming in as well. You know, I agree with, in an effort not just to keep kicking the can down the road, we need to take a decision now. But you know, we are a very big provider of crematorium services. We have 4 cremators in Bournemouth. I believe it's the busiest crematorium in the country, and there will be a point where they come to the end of life as well. So we do have options, kind of bereavement service that we offer to move with the times and new technology as and when it feels appropriate, proven and achievable. So on that basis, I'd like to formally recommend that we move towards option 3. What I'd also, this option paper was put together. Recommendation A was there as a kind of a hold all for all options about building into the each capital programme, and a more generic amount. So what I might suggest is that we don't proceed with option A, which has a larger figure for the capital programme, and instead have a revised recommendation D, that Cabinet agrees to progress with option 3 and will look to build into the capital programme once ordered. At that point, at that decision point, we can ensure that it's put standard, but that we are formally committing today to get the electric cremators in Poole restored at pace. Is my seconder happy to proceed with that and the revised wording?
Yes, happy to second that.
Yeah, are we all happy with that? Yeah, in which case I'll take that to the vote. All of those in favour? Agreed. Thank you very much indeed. And you know, I hope that sends a real message to the sitting on and making those decisions that will have a real impact. Colleagues, we've got a number of papers now regarding regeneration and the future of regeneration across the area. I'll move to item number 10, which is the outline business case for the Poole Civic Centre site, which I'll propose, and I believe my colleague Mike White will second. Colleagues, can just bear me a second while I bring up the proper page on my screen. Again, I'd like to thank Scrutiny for looking at detail pre this coming, so that was last month, and actually number of recommendations from that scrutiny session have been incorporated into this as well. Colleagues will note, and I won't go into full history because I did it at the last cabinet meeting, the patter that we're doing with Future Places. Future Places is our regeneration arm. We have a commissioning model, and we ask them to go out and bring back together an option for each of the sites that we've commissioned for them to look at. At that point, that recommendation is then considered by us on the client side to see whether we're happy with the direction of travel. That's the outline business case, which we're considering with the. If we're happy with that, we then approve that. That then becomes capitalized, which means that we're then progressing with our regeneration aspirations without it causing a revenue pressure. And at the same point, we then ask Future Places to move on to the full business case where the meat of the work is done. And again, this is always a very good touch point, decision point for any further additions that we may wish to tell Future Places to look at. Full business case going to the next stage. So the first item in front of us, item number 10, is around the future of the Poole Civic Centre site. I'm really pleased that this information in the appendix is now in public in public as well, so that hopefully those not involved in the council can see the incredible amount of work that has gone into looking what the future options for this site are. We'd made really clear as an administration, this was one of those sites that was previously highlighted for disposal. I think this is a historic building, and we'd made a commitment that we wanted to keep this in council ownership certainly for the short to medium term, to foster the asset and to really have that strategic control about what it should be doing in the future, particularly because it is of historic and civic significance, and also is pretty central to our placemaking. The suggestion in front of us from Future Places is that it work, and they've had significant interest to progress to move this forward for the main part of the Civic Centre and crucially to keep the Chartered Trustees civic part of it as part of a central part of that plan. And then the idea is that then you have a much improved building, a much improved offer that has something called a halo effect, which then provides a financial uplift for the residential offer that will progress around as well. I'd just like to say, actually, this is, I think, a real demonstration of the value of having the level of expertise advising us on this. I certainly never would have, this wouldn't have been where I would have jumped to with the plan on this one, and yet we have not only a scheme in front of us, which really helps with the placemaking of the area, but also as signified by the soft market testing, has some serious private interest in as well. So what we're approving today is the outline business case to say that we're happy with this direction of travel, and then what we'll be recommending to council that we move to full business case stage, and that's where the kind of meaty work will be done on the next stages to bring this to fruition as well. Lots of detail in here, lots of work gone on over the last year, but I'll move to Councillor White to second. Thank you.
I'm very happy to second this. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much. So now I'll move to colleagues that are joining us online and not on Cabinet, and I'll move to Councillor Trent first. Councillor Trent, are you there? I'm not hearing Councillor Trent. I'm now seeing him, but okay. I'll give you one more chance, Councillor Trent. No, in which case I'll move on to Diana Butler. Councillor Butler, thank you.
Thank you, Leader. Yes, just to say, I was on the initial working group talking about the future of the Civic Centre, Poole Civic Centre, and then we were talking about just a small part of it at that time, and we weren't talking about anything else. This outline business case talks about the actual listed building and the land adjacent to it, which is suggested for development. Now, whatever happens to the site, whatever the civic building becomes, parking is needed, and also it will have an impact on other things as well. the actual buildings that have been put on the plan are huge scale in comparison to the Civic building. The Civic building was built in the 30s and was quite a modest building, but quite beautiful really in its own right. And we've got to consider views from different angles, from Poole Park and from the other side. You know, you look across the lake at Poole Park and you can see this area. If we have massive buildings put up with lots of floors, 10 to 12 floors, it could change the whole appearance of it. The impact of having a hotel with residential neighbours could be quite difficult. I think also, you know, they might have problems together. I think the main thing as well is that the public haven't been consulted at all on the future use of the Civic building, and I feel that they should really have a voice quite early on in this. The cost of a full business case is going to cost the council quite a bit, and I think that more ideas could go into the pot really as to what the future would be. Poole Charter Trustees in January's meeting were only given a verbal report as to the intentions of the listed building, and we weren't even given visual plans of what it might look like inside the building. It's only until now that we've actually seen it. So I would like, I think a lot of consideration should be put before anything goes forward really on this. So thanks very much for hopefully this can all be considered. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Butler. A lot of valid points there, and I'll address those at the end. But absolutely, a number of those will be part of that next stage of work. Particularly, there's reference to the reference master plan that will be created to take into account all of those points around massing and the appropriateness, and that, again, that's what we've got the planning process, but also to ensure that the level of engagement of the next steps is absolutely top notch as well. I'm sure that is you know, very well received. Councillor Barron.
Thank you, Leader. I feel the majority of Poole are saddened to see the building mothballed in the way it is. You know, many of us prior to the formation of BCP were against the formation, but we are where we are. I was strongly against the previous administration's plans to sell it off without exploring the potentials. That was a great concern to me at the time. I feel the conversion of a hotel and building 360 homes is a good option for the town. It'll make a beautiful hotel and it benefits from mosaics and Art Deco features. It will bring in visitors, and it means the hotel will still be accessible to residents, where if it was converted to residential, obviously it wouldn't be. Another benefit is that mayoral functions can still take place there, and this is something that I've worked very closely with Future Places and indeed the mayor as well to make sure that going forward that happens. Looking through the outline business case, it doesn't mention about storing the mayoral regalia once again in the borough safe. I think that would be a good thing to get the mayoral regalia back in Poole. And that's about it at this moment. Thank you, Chairman.
Yeah, thank you, Steve, and again, thank you for your work as the lead member on this for you know, keeping that really tight focus about what's important on this issue. And I think it's been really worthwhile, and will continue to be as we enter the next stages as well. I will go to Councillor Butt now. Jude.
Thanks very much, Mr. Chairman. Yes, Councillor Barron has knocked the nail directly on the head. We must look to the benefit for distinctly Poole in this occasion with regard to this particular matter. Obviously, all this is under planning law, so all those concerns of Councillor Butler's, I think, rather fall, because clearly we have a strict planning process, and if it isn't up to the mark with regard to that, it's not going to happen. So I don't have concerns around the planning process, the bulk and mass, etc., that'll be addressed there. I do, however, echo what Councillor Barron says. We, the residents of Poole, are rather tired of having our civic integrity not on the put on the back burner, really. Our regalias in Bournemouth, we are apart from Christchurch, with the second oldest mayoralty in existence in this area, and the people of Poole would like to have their regalia in Poole. So I'd like to have an undertaking, please, that as quickly as possible we have a safe, which I don't even think could be broken into by the best of criminals. It certainly stood the test of time with regard to that. To return our regalia to Poole, and to be absolutely certain and clear as to what is going to happen with regard to that civic provision, the mayoralty provision in the hotel. It mustn't be subjugated, it mustn't be subsumed, it mustn't be an also ran. It must be very much a priority. In fact, something which any hotel owner we hope would be proud of, to have the mayoralty housed in their business area. So I think that's extremely important. So if we could have that undertaking, please, and if we could also have an undertaking to very quickly look to returning Poole's regalia back to Poole, because it is ours and it should really be kept in keeping with Poole and its residents. And I think if you spoke to any resident with regard to the Civic Centre, what's really odd is Bournemouth Town Hall was once a hotel and it's now a civic centre, and we have a civic centre which may probably become a hotel, which is an anomaly. But as Councillor Barron says, the benefits that it will bring to Poole in employment and access and all the other matters that sit around a development such as this are huge, and obviously they will be considered under the planning process. So as long as the integrity of the civic mayoralty is maintained, I would be so disposed to support this. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Button. I echo your points on that. As a fellow Poole Chartered trustee, I do think it's absolutely important that we maintain the centrality of the civic function. That's why I'm actually quite proud that these proposals put that civic provision as a central part of the plans. I think that's absolutely critical, and I love your point about the different use of buildings. Obviously, it was not this administration that took the decision to centralise everything into Bournemouth. That was the previous administration, but the building that we're in, you're quite right, has been a hotel, a hospital, and many other things. And I do quite like the idea that these buildings create a new life of their own. But thank you very much for your words, Councillor Bartlett.
Yeah. Good morning, Cabinet. The point I'd like to raise is one of the democratic process here. The Poole Town Civic Centre already has an approval for its use as a civic centre with the mayoral facilities, and also for use as a coroner's office. And the expenditure was approved by full council. Now, with this commitment to developing the full business case here, it's a large amount of money, and I believe that it would be necessary for the decision that's already been made by full council to be reversed, and that will require this matter to be brought to full council to reverse the original decision, which is now been just put on hold. In other words, the council has already decided what it was going to do with the civic centre. That's now going to be reversed by this business case taken forward, and you can't see anything happening in that period. So I think that decision does formally need to be taken back to full council. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Bartlett, and I'll address that point directly in a moment. I'm not seeing any other hands. I'll move to colleagues in the room on Cabinet for any further comments. Councillor Nicola Green.
Thank you, Leader. And actually a slightly different point, but picking up on something that Councillor Bartlett has said. Clearly, this is a regeneration paper, and I'm really pleased to support it. But I do just think there's something about the tone in there, and Councillor Juice Butts has asked for many assurances, but the one that I would like to give is that we are considering very carefully what the long-term accommodation of the coroner's service should look like. It's perhaps fitting that we've spent a long time discussing how our residents feel in terms of their crematorium access, but actually for families who are going through the inquest process, their needs are also very great. We're very happy to give a home to the coroner's service and to make it as accessible as it needs to be for people at that time. And I'd just like perhaps if in here in your summing up, you might speak to that, because I think it's really important. It's a service that we value and one that must have an appropriate accommodation. And I'm sure that somewhere within the scope of further work, we can give that assurance. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Absolutely correct, Councillor Green. And to address that point directly, as well as Councillor Bartlett's, and to give that assurance, the recommendations that we're considering in front of us are A, B, and C, which is for Cabinet, which is to approve the outline business case, to declare the asset surplus to requirements, and to also fulfil the requirement to enter into a capital investment programme and to fund future places. The second recommendations are going to council, which is to move to the full business case, and on that second point, to establish that there is a change and that location for the coroner's service will be progressed by different means by the council's transformation programme, assets and accommodation work stream. And I think if there was maybe a criticism, so first of all, to directly Councillor Bartlett's point, that is a full council decision, which will then I suppose replace the previous decision. So I'm pretty confident that the constitution is being followed to the letter on that. The wider point that I think Councillor Green makes is that we do need to be very careful about kind of unintended consequences or making quick decisions about some of these things. And I think that, there could have been a criticism previously that, we'll just have the coroner's service as part of a building and then we'll make it into flats. Was that the most considered way of looking at that service, which, as Councillor Green said, is vitally important for not just to do, but actually to do in the right way for so many people. So actually building that into the council's transformation programme, I think, gives a much stronger strategic focus to the future of that service and where it is, and to find the most appropriate way, rather than a quick decision that will just kind of shove it in a building. So I do have the confidence of that. As an aside, actually, on that transformation point, a point I was going to raise earlier in the financial update, we need to get the council's transformation programme right. It's critical not just for the financial future sustainability of the council, but to make sure, it's not just a transformation programme, it is a council service improvement programme, and to make sure that we are using transformation not just to save dosh, but to dramatically improve council services as well. I think we've got a lot of rigour in the transformation progress as it stands. I do, however, feel that there needs to be further work in making sure that the political buy into that process, and that the kind of laser focus on its delivery is central as well. And on that basis, I've asked the Chief Executive to add another layer of governance to the transformation programme to make sure that the transformation and efficiency programme has its own group of the senior politicians as well as the senior council officers going forward, to make sure that we've got eyes all over that. I've called it the Transformation and Efficiency Action Meeting, which colleagues will know spells team, because I think it's really important that it's a one team approach. But joking aside, it's really critical that we land that. And I think, the commitment in here to make the coroner's service part of that programme means that we have a much better strategic focus on the best way to deliver that, rather than just taking quite cursory decisions. Colleagues, a really good and overall discussion on that. I do think it's something that we can be proud of and excited about. I note with a little bit of humour some of the headlines around it being a huge hotel that we're planning here, but of course the plans here are for about, what I think, 84 beds, and for comparison, I think the Thistle Hotel is 70. So we're not talking about some big monstrosity, and I accept Councillor Butler's points that we need to be mindful of the impact on local residents as well. But I think that the calibre of what is intended here, we can have some confidence that not only will that conflict not arise, but actually a well done provision here, protecting the centrality of the civil provision as well, could lead to a really impressive offering which has real added placemaking benefits as well. So colleagues, we've got the first three recommendations for Cabinet, and then Cabinet recommending the second two recommendations to full council. Could I ask for all of those in favour? Great. And that is unanimous and agreed. Thank you very much. Thank you to all colleagues for the discussion on that, and the intensity of the discussion at scrutiny as well. It was very welcome and has enabled us to keep improving. And again, thank you to Future Places for their continued work on this. Colleagues, item number 11 is a similar outline business case, this time for the Christchurch Civic Centre buildings. And again, this one is the outline business case to look at the plans for this site. Again, soft market testing really interestingly has established that this could be very suitable again for a more boutique hotel. And again, we've had significant interest for that, as well as that open, using that building, which is not by any stretch end of life. It's a building that's in quite good order and is surprisingly well convertible to such a future use, and also to look at a larger master plan to look at the kind of phase development of some residential as part of the second phase on that site as well. Colleagues, bear with me. I'll just bring up the formal paper so I can go to the full recommendations. Do we know what page it is? 353. Apologies. It's a problem when you've got 475 items on the agenda. It means there's a lot of scrolling. And again, thank you to Scrutiny for their work on this item. I think that it's safe to say that there was some understandable concern in that meeting around the flood risk in that area, and just having some further assurance that that would be considered as part of the next stages. I can confirm, and again, it has been updated in the paper itself. There has been quite a lot of work already on the flood risk, but actually the flood risk element will be properly bottomed out as part of the full business case stage, and actually a lot of work's already undergone with Future Places to ascertain what is possible and what isn't possible, but of course that is absolutely central to making sure that we get that right as the next stage. So happy to introduce this item, and again, we've had long discussions about this previously, and who have I got seconding this item?
Happy to do that for me.
Happy to second. Brilliant. Thank you very much. In which case, I will move on to colleagues not in the meeting for any comments or questions. And I've got Councillor Brooks.
Yes, thank you, Leader. And coming forward from Future Places to Cabinet today, I think it's quite notable that it will actually have significant benefit to the area in regeneration. And regeneration is part of my role in Cabinet Plus for Christchurch. So I have a particular interest in seeing this paper come forward. The change will affect the community positively by continuing to regenerate the area, providing quality public-facing provision and developing much-needed housing on a brownfield site. The development of a high-quality boutique hotel alongside the residential development with the associated improvements to the public realm close to the shopping areas will increase opportunities for the community to interact, reducing loneliness and improving well-being. The proposals will provide good accessibility to green space and the river to improve physical and mental health and well-being, and will allow people to engage with the natural environment, encouraging informal interaction and improving community cohesion. Well, that's all the sort of the community soft issues, but the reality is we are actually developing what is a neighbourhood quarter, because as we know, there are proposals before the council for redevelopment of adjoining sites, which will bring much needed housing to this part of Christchurch. And therefore, with the addition of a boutique hotel, it does create a very desirable location, both in terms of the shopping provision and the wider aspects of actually a strong Christchurch into the future. So I fully endorse this paper coming to you today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Brooks, and again, thank you to your work as the lead member for Christchurch Regeneration. I think your input on this has been absolutely vital and well regarded. I think it's also safe to say that this is, I think, yet another example of that more experienced, expert-led approach of taking a step back and looking at what is in the art of the possible. The easiest solution here, again, when this was declared surplus previously, would have been to flog it off again. And yet here we have proposals in front of us that put that placemaking as a central part. I'm also particularly interested in the greening of the car parks that we're looking at doing, and this is a feature of other pieces of work that Future Places are undertaking, which I just think is, you know, is an added dimension that just we wouldn't normally be considering. But again, thank you to all your work on this as well. I'll move now to Councillor Diana Butler.
Thank you, Leader. This is talking on the Christchurch building. As this area is prone to flooding, and you've got the rivers there, has anything been suggested as to using any form of water power? Because we're talking about being greener. Well, water wheels are very useful in lots of different sizes. Perhaps that could be incorporated into any new building scheme. And the other thing is, I don't know whether we're still talking about the Poole Civic Centre as well on this.
Thank you. We've moved on from that item, Councillor
Okay.
Butler, but yes,
Okay.
I will feed in your a mill as part of the hotel. I
Well,
like that idea.
it
I'll
could
feed it in.
be. I mean, you know, I think nature provides, and we shouldn't view excessive water as excessive rain as a problem necessarily. Lots of other countries have used it to their benefit. So, you know, why not use it? Thank you.
Thank you. There's no such thing as crazy ideas, and I'll definitely make sure that that's fed into the next stage of the full business case. So thank you very much for that input as well. I'll now move to colleagues that are not joining us remotely, colleagues on Cabinet in front of us. Any comments or questions on this? I'm not seeing any, in which case we have a recommendation that we approve the outline business case, that we again ratify previous decisions to declare the asset surplus to requirements, that we progress and pay Future Places for its development advice, and then recommend to full council that we move to the full business case stage with the appropriate costings. Could I have all of those in favour of that piece of work? Thank you very much. And again, that's unanimous in the room. Thank you again. I mean, I think this is the fourth or fifth item we've taken forward. And I think, again, it's worth colleagues remembering that, you know, we set up Future Places as our regeneration vehicle only just over a year ago. So to see that the pace of scale of what we're now achieving and making those firm plans, I think is to be credited. We'll now move to item number 12, which is the redevelopment of Beach Road car park. Colleagues, bear with me. I'll just get onto the right page for this one as well. This is one that has been toyed around with for a number of years. This is a car park that is quite close to the beach in the Camphor Cliffs area of our conurbation, and there has always been this slight tug of war between the need to maximise the use of this site, but actually particularly the local need to ensure that the parking is maintained as much as possible. I think what's really interesting and I think really positive coming forward from this outline business case is it does both. What Future Places have done here is look at the usable parking spaces that are there and actually come forward with a plan which I think is very welcome to maintain at least the level of those usable parking spaces and consolidate them onto one side of the site, and also as part of that process to build in added possible future provision as well. So as we move forward with our more strategic parking studies, that gives us the ability to add more parking, public parking should we need to on that site, but also then to release the other part of the site in a very, very popular area of our town, to be able to look for a residential led development that could be really quite interesting indeed. So really pleased to see the balance of those come forward with this outline business case, and again this is one where there's a big report here for colleagues to read through, and what we'll be doing here is proving the outline business case, saying that on balance we think that's the right direction of travel, and then moving forward to the full business case stage as well. We've also answered the earlier question regarding covenants on the site. I think we've got a satisfactory answer to that. So really happy to propose this one. I'll look to colleague Mike Green to second.
Thank you very much, Leader, and you've very well represented the regeneration benefits that come from this if it goes through after the full business case comes forward. I'd just like to add in seconding, if I may, those from a transport perspective, because it's always controversial when people look at development on car parks, and indeed, seen from letters in the Echo going back many years, how many people think that as BCP and as Bournemouth Council's predecessors, that we were busy selling up all the car parks. And in fact, I think this is probably my last opportunity to make clear that has actually never happened. And apart from one that came through, which we actually opposed, and there was one on appeal at Durley, the Bournemouth Development Company proposals that have actually come to fruition, everyone has either re-provided the same or increased the number of car parking spaces, public car parking spaces that has been available. And I do think that bears repeating. So in this case, we are looking at a large car park. We're also looking at one that has significant value in the location that it is, but one that has suffered, as would expect there, over many years and decades, through landslip, through trees encroaching onto it. And what that's actually left us with is fewer than 200 car parking spaces who are actually compliant with the council's modern standards, particularly for size, because as we discussed in different meetings, cars have grown larger, and it is important that if we are going to have people give people the opportunity to park in a public car park, then there should be sufficient space around those cars and sufficient accessibility to get in without potential damage to their own cars or to others that are around. So that is the situation here. We have fewer than 200 compliant car parking spaces. So what the Future Places proposal has, apart from all of the benefits of consolidation, which will free up valuable land, which will mean receipts that can be used for further promoting the area and further promoting BCP's economic activity and eating into the housing needs. But their proposal here actually also increase in the number of compliant car parking spaces up to 250, with the opportunity through putting on another deck, if that's required at some stage, either during the initial development or in the future, up to 310 spaces. So it is really important from a transport perspective to say that this is a positive move all the way through. Also within that portfolio, of course, the car parks themselves, and as part of this work, what we will see is significant improvements to the sustainable drainage. We will look to something which is very near to my own heart, which is introducing sufficient electric vehicle charging points, and we'll be looking at enhanced security through lighting. So I feel that it is most certainly worth going through to the full business case on this, and I very much hope it will be successful. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you very much, and again, thank you for reiterating that point that is often lost. That certainly in the decisions that we have made whilst being in charge, we have simultaneously progressed throughout the conurbation with regeneration without compromising public parking spaces. It's a particular bugbear of mine that so many people in Bournemouth in particular seem to think that we've been building stuff and getting rid of public parking spaces, whereas the reality, certainly up until only a few months ago, was that there were in a net benefit of 30 new additional public parking spaces, despite all of the regeneration that's underway. And I think this is another good example how if you box clever, you can have your cake and eat it. So I think really well made points. Right, I'll now move to colleagues that are not on cabinet for their questions or additions for this item, and I'll move to Lead Member for Regeneration, Councillor Barron.
Thank you, Leader. As I know you know, I was initially very sceptical when this development was first mentioned. I generally don't like car parks being sold off by the council. such as the one on Southbourne Crossroads, which is not really 100% sure what's happening with that one at the moment. But this proposal doesn't actually lose any parking. Also, as discussed for future places, I can only support this scheme if there's a recommendation put in place that at least 75% of the funds are in some way ring-fenced to rejuvenate Poole bus station. What concerns me is that if something isn't actually agreed along those lines, the funds from this potential development will just evaporate on vanity projects throughout the three towns, and Poole won't actually benefit from it. I think that the bus station is an embarrassment to the town. It's one of the busiest areas, and yet it's probably one of the worst looking areas, and it just desperately needs to be refurbished. So if there's a way that we can somehow tie that up with this project, that would be good. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Barron. Thank you. We know we've had many discussions on this, and I fully agree. You know, the aim of doing these regeneration projects, particularly those that aren't just about the town centre regeneration, are actually yes, sure, placemaking, but also to make sure that we can then use that opportunity to regenerate other parts of our towns as well. So what I'd also point out, and I'll come back to this in a little while, as we've reiterated, the point of Future Places is that we ask them to go away and come up with a good idea for a site, present it to us at the outline business stage, we then kick it around, and then as part of the next stage of the process, we go, okay, where do we want them to focus as part of that meaty next stage? And so this is exactly the time, I think, for us to be giving a very clear direction as to what we expect to come next. So I've got a suggested way forward, which I'll come on to in a moment to give that clarity of what we'd like to see apart from the next steps. But you know, fully agree with your sentiments on this, and I think we can certainly you know, accommodate that that drive. I'll move now to Councillor Butt, Councillor Judes Butt.
Yes, I agree with your proposal, Councillor Barron. I think it's laudable. Because there are great concerns that money does tend to evaporate into the ether. And of course, that amount of money across the three towns is not going to be as much as if it's invested in the one area where it's desperately needed. I do have concerns, though, around the bus station because we don't own it. And there seems to be a reticence from the owners to actually do much about it. So I would hope that we'd be able to sit round the table and with that money, which I would like to see definitely ring fence, we're able to get some match funding and we're able to engage with them to get them to actually do something about the disgraceful state of that bus station. And it may encourage them to be able to do so. But it is in desperate need of something, especially people in Poole Town who, well, they don't feel an ownership of it. They'd like to feel an ownership of it. But they don't. But we could do so much more in there. Of course, these monies wouldn't be enough to do what is absolutely needed, which would be to have the buses on one side and a provision, service provision for residents with businesses, etc., on the other. So you got off the bus and you walked through an area and you were in a nice area away from fumes, etc. Because the way in which it's laid out now doesn't work. Obviously, that is not going to happen with these fundings, but if we could move towards using them wisely, and also to speak to the people, the local people, especially in Poole Town, who will have a view on this because they've had to tolerate a very, very poor service for many, many decades now. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Butt, and again, you know, agree with many of those points. I'll now move to colleagues that are on Cabinet for any questions or comments. No, in which case I've got a few comments to make myself. You know, as I'd said, this is a really useful moment when we consider these outline business cases to reflect on what we like, what we don't like, and then to give a really firm sense of clarity around the next set of principles that we'd like to see as part of the full business case, and you know, because that's where the kind of quantum of the main work will be done, and that's absolutely the way that the commissioning model that we've set up with Future Places is designed to work. With regard to Poole bus station, you know, I agree this is an area that is pretty critical to get right. It's in the centre of our town, and it's really tied up with people's sense of pride in the place as well. Has always been a tough nut to crack. And, you know, Councillor Barron and I have been working on this for a couple of years because it's not in our direct ownership. We as part of the council's bid to the government's Levelling Up Round 2 fund, we put forward something which Future Place were leading on called the Lighthouse Quarter, and this would have, if successful, I think nailed that issue and put some significant public realm improvements into place. Obviously we weren't successful with that bid, but the benefit of that piece of work means that we have some very firm ideas about what is in the art of the possible to improve this area, which we just need the cash to do it. So I'm hopeful that that may well find legs in some other forum, but equally I do think it's not you know, a bad idea to signify as part of the next stage of this process, of the full business case, that we take into account whether we should be investing those funds into further regeneration, in particular the Poole bus station. Therefore, and I think it's important to not just note that, but to give that firm sense of clarity. So my recommendation is that we put an extra recommendation in this report, recommendation F, which is to ask, as part of that full business case, to look at options to reinvest eventual surplus funds to regeneration with a particular focus on Poole bus station. I think that gives a really clear indication that that's our expectation, that we want that looked at, but also I think gives us the flexibility that if we can find an answer before that time, and it might well be that you know, other funds from government come into place, that we can find other ways as well, but gives a sense of direction to explore as part of that full business case, whether we can consider that as part of the process. I'll bring Adam Richards in.
Can I just remind Cabinet that it is not normally your practice to ring-fence capital receipts, and that within the Council's financial strategy, you are currently earmarking capital receipts towards the funding of the transformation programme. So I just need you to be aware of the potential conflict in that objective, that additional recommendation that you're putting into this report with current policy of the Council.
Thank you very much. And point noted, I've been careful with the wording. I think it's absolutely critical that we make sure that we've got that focus on transformation. I think what I'm asking for in the recommendation for the full business case is to look at options about whether that's possible and how we might facilitate that. There will be further decision points at which stage we can take that into consideration. So, Councillor Mike Green.
Yeah, thank you. Could I just ask? I think you have confirmed it there, Leader, but maybe also Mr. Richards would be able to, that we are not tying that there. I think it would be from a in my new role, it would be wrong not to be wary of anything that would tie our hands in the future as far as those capital receipts, etc.
Be clear about my wording. It would be to ask, as part of the full business case, to look at options around reinvesting eventual surplus funds into regeneration. And I think that's, hope Baron makes a good point as well. We don't know what's in the art of the possible. We may well have moved forward as part of our transformation by then. And I do think that keeping a close eye on the work that has gone into the regeneration of what we call the Lighthouse Quarter by any means is one that should remain on the agenda. So I'm satisfied if you're satisfied, Councillor Gray.
In that case, I will be, and I will be supporting this. Thank you, Linda.
Great. Colleagues, I'm very conscious we're only halfway through the agenda, so at that point I will make that recommendation with the amended addition and ask for all those in favour. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you to all for the contributions. I'm going to start tightening up the agenda a little bit and ask those that are contributing to kind of keep their comments as brief as possible. We are only on item number 13 and we have another 10 more to get through. So we'll now move to item number 13, which is the Future Places Annual Review. Really pleased to propose this, and I think Councillor Beverly Dunlop will be seconding. This is much of this document as possible in public facing mode. I think we have to remember we talk a lot about Future Places, but we are only a year, 18 months on from setting it up from scratch. And whilst I'm really pleased that we're now on 5 or 6 outline business cases that we've now approved by Cabinet and Council, there is so much more additional work that is going on with Future Places, particularly as a kind of strategic, bringing that strategic golden thread together on regeneration. And what I like about this document It's for those of you that have any concerns about the quantum of work that is going on across the BCP region on regeneration, particularly what Future Places has done, take a read of this document and you'll see that this joined up approach is developing, you know, real progress as we move forward. That extends not just to pieces of work around individual projects, not just around placemaking such as Westover Road, Avenue Road, the Pool Lighthouse Quarter and others that we've discussed, but also on a reset of our relationship with colleagues such as Homes England. Chief Executive and I sat with Future Places with them at a recent meeting with Homes England only last week, and I think I don't think I'm projecting too much to say that they've been really impressed with the programme approach that is being led by Future Places, and I'm really confident that we could get some you know, real commitment from Homes England and other partners shortly because of the discipline that this function is bringing to. So really happy to bring this item forward for recommendation. I'll move to Councillor Dunlop for seconding.
Thank you, Leader. I'm delighted to second this paper. I think if where councils are serious about regeneration, attracting investment and transforming the town, you can't do it half-heartedly by heaping major development projects on your staff. What they do is they bring in high-level, nationally recognised expertise, highly respected people, which sends out a very clear message that the local authority is serious about regeneration. And if you look at some of the major conurbations like Manchester and Birmingham, they're now unrecognisable as the sort of tired, out-of-date places they were 30 years ago. And they didn't achieve that kind of regeneration without a clear plan, removing the obstacles to regeneration and recruiting the right expertise. And I think that's what this administration did. And it's very clear from this annual review that establishing Future Places continues to prove that it was the right thing to do. And we've got 5 major projects now with business cases outlined. You've got 16 more coming up behind them, including those sort of really big cross-cutting projects with key stakeholders. And these projects will have a significant impact on our towns. They'll attract investment and ultimately regenerate our sort of tired areas. And changing our environment, improving life of the residents. And they also will have an impact and are having an impact on the tourism and culture aspects of my portfolio, because some of these projects will enable some of the facilities that we need to improve on tourism, that we need for culture. And I think it's quite clear that Future Places have had a tremendous added a tremendous bonus to our area and really supporting the big plan through driving through our regeneration ambitions. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you very much. And for the record, I think Beverly's unwell. She's not just really emotional about Future Places, which you know, I mean, I was moved by some of those words. And get your Kleenexes out, girls and boys. But no, brilliant words. And again, just to reiterate, for those of you that are interested in regeneration, I strongly urge you to read this annual report. I think you know, it is the first annual report of this, and the fact that we're getting such recognition from the likes of Homes England, when you read this document, you can see why. I'm not seeing any hands from those not joining us in person. I'll move to colleagues in the room for any further comments or questions, and I'm not seeing any, in which case, you know, real credit to all of the work, both in-house and outhouse, or outhouse. We've had mills, we've had outhouses. You know, thank you to everyone for the work that's gone on that. I think we just make sure that I'm happy with the recommendation in front of us. Apologies, colleagues, I've lost my place again. Deputy Leader, bail me out. We are recommending that Cabinet note the contents of the Future Places annual report. You're not quick enough, you're fired. Are we all happy to? Yes, you're already quit anyway. All those in favour? Thank you very much. We're all getting a bit giddy, girls and boys, so let's try and keep it safe going forwards. Right. The next item, which is item number 14 is the Bournemouth Development Company LLP extension of auction execution dates. I'm proposing this one. I think Councillor Nicola Green is seconding this one. Again, really quite just a formal paper. We have a 5-year rolling plan for Bournemouth Development Company, and as part of that we have dates built in, and if we reach those dates we have to formally extend those dates. So that with this option execution date extension paper looks to extend the dates which originally agreed for the set development plans for Winter Gardens, Eden Glen and Cotlands, and looks to extend those. I think it gives a firm commitment that we're still absolutely on board with the plans and working closely with our partners through the Bournemouth Development Company to foster those going forward. As colleagues will know, we're doing a bigger piece of work on the Winter Gardens around a combined approach with Bournemouth International Centre. Again, refer to the annual update that we've just discussed from Future Places to get a little bit of the sense of that direction of travel. But again, working really closely with BDC on that, and I feel really confident actually that in particular the work that's gone into Cotlands Road is now starting to come to the pointy end, and certainly if I'm still here post May, it will be one of my real drives to make sure that this area, which is really central part of the business district, if you like, of Bournemouth, and the huge opportunities that we've got there are progressed at pace. We're very, very close, and there's a great amount of work going on to that. So happy to propose this, and I've got Councillor Nicola Green to second.
Thank you, Leader. Happy to do so, just to make sure that all our paperwork is up to date and to ensure good governance while we carry on with this important work.
Thank you very much. I'll move to colleagues not on the call, not in the room, and Councillor Bartlett.
Thank you, Leader. Just a few points. None of these programmes are currently committed to in the capital plan, and nor are they accommodated in the MTFP at all. So they don't actually exist as formally agreed council projects at the moment. That's the first point. Just coming on to the detail of some of them, the Winter Gardens, this has been in fruition now for about 10 years. And a year ago, the BDC posted a loss of £10 million, and it's the company that it owns, the Winter Gardens Development LLP, posted over £5 million loss on that project. So I'm not quite sure why we have to perpetuate the issue with the BDC when Future Places has now been brought in and are also working on that area. So I think that needs some clarification as how the funding between Future Places and the BDC's ongoing work is accommodated. The second point is on Eden Glen. This paper says quite clearly that the scheme would be delivered without re-provision of public parking spaces on the site. Now, this is in direct contradiction to the current Bournemouth local plan, which states quite clearly that there should be 60 public car parking spaces to be used mostly by blue badge holders. And then indeed the policy goes on to say that no development will ever be allowed or will not be allowed without the provision of car parking. Just going on to Cotlands Road now, Cotlands Road, again, the Future Places are looking at that, and it's difficult to understand what the relationship now is between Future Places and the BDC. And indeed, when you think about it, we have our own regeneration department looking at it. We've got the Future Places looking at it, got BDC involved somehow. I really don't understand how that relationship is working. But the final point I want to make is one on the financial aspects of this. Now, the paper does say there's no direct financial implications of this programme. But what I would say is, whilst there's no direct financial implications, it does open liabilities open, because just taking Cotlands Road, for example, not an awful lot of money has been spent on the total advance fees which have been authorised by the council. But by agreeing to extend this option date, it does then reopen the liability for the further £4.68 million worth of expenditure under those total advance fees. In fact, if you looked at the three projects together, it actually exposes the council to potentially another £5.85 million. Now, I understand that you know, it is not a direct cost at the moment, but it is a liability. And the key to all of this is that at the end of the day, the council will pay, you know, one way or the other, whether it's through future places, through the BDC arrangement or our own costs, the council, the taxpayer will end up picking up these costs. Now, given the history of BDC and some of the losses that the council have now had to stamp up to, I just think we need to understand that this isn't just a case of saying we're going to extend these option dates. There are real financial implications in this. So it's not as simple as this paper purports it to be. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Bartlett. I've got answers to a number of those questions, which I'll come to in a moment, but I'm just seeing if there's any other colleagues wishing to talk on this item. I'm not seeing any colleagues in the room. Councillor Mike Green.
Chairman, I would like to, but can I hear your? I don't want to say anything which to which the answers already come from yourself.
I'm going to say that you might disagree with me then. No, and again, you know, thank you to Councillor Bartlett for his interest. We've gone over this a number of times over the years in many scrutiny meetings. I think first of all, you know, to correct the record, he consistently talks about losses on certain of the sites, such as Winter Gardens. You know, locally, you know, certainly the council side, we've made provision for funds spent to date, but you know, a loss is not a loss until such a time as it is crystallised, and I think that's only the prudent thing to do. He says that these sites don't exist anymore, but they absolutely do. We've got approved site development plans, and they are in the approved BDC partnership business plans. So they do actually exist, and the extension of these option execution dates, whilst recognising that, you know, we don't have them firmly in the capital plan at this stage, they do exist in a number of forms. And of course, as we all know, we crystallise the capital plan when we've got the final idea of what we're going to do with each of the sites. Again, you know, with the Winter Gardens, I appreciate we are in a period of change and analysis with these, but until such stage as there is a new plan, I think it's absolutely prudent that we keep the existing plans there and those relationships being built. We have not yet had a formal business plan outline, suggested plans for the combined Winter Gardens BIC from Future Places. BDC will be working very closely with them, and therefore the current plan is the current plan. I expect that work to be forthcoming pretty shortly, and at that point there will be a council decision on whether to change tact on that. But it's absolutely right that we do the work to you know, as the world changes, figure out what is the best thing for us to do. I disagree with his probably bigger analysis, is that probably the best thing to do is nothing. You know, these sites are pretty central to not just the regeneration of Bournemouth, but our, you know, wider regeneration plans for the future of our economy, the future of our town centres, the future financial sustainability of the council. And yes, these things do take time, but I do think the rigour that we're now bringing to the process is to be welcomed. I always wish it was quicker than it is, but you know, these things do take time. Directly on the parking on the Eden Glen issue, I don't think they're out of step with the current policy. My understanding is that the planning department made a few changes as part of the failure to comply with 5-year land supply about a year ago, to say that they would be a bit more flexible on that reprovision of public parking, so that does give the flexibility where possible. As said previously in the meeting, I think there's a political commitment here to keep the public parking at the top of our agenda. I think there was a restriction in the existing policy that had that reprovisioned on site. And I think the movement from the planning department is to be more flexible with that on-site reprovision of public parking, in recognition of the fact that we're not currently meeting our 5-year land supply target. although mindful of the fact that there are potential changes in the forthcoming NPPF that may well mean that we don't have to conform to that way. But of course, we've got our new local plan coming as well. And then kind of final point for me, it's about his comment about the history of the BDC almost in a negative way. I think let's not try and rewrite history. Look at the number of successful schemes that the BDC has put forward. We've got St Stephen's Road, the kind of treetops development, which I think is a really good example of a high-end private rented sector providing local homes for local people, which is always at full capacity. We've got another iconic building at Bury Court, which again, every time I see it on the skyline, I'm quite proud of. I think it's a welcome addition to Bournemouth's skyline. We've got the recent development on the West Cliff as well. Westfield Mansions. Somebody help me out. Westcliff Mansions. I should know because it gave me a nice picture of it, which is hung up on my wall, which again I think is a prime example of how regeneration should look. And then of course the very first two schemes that they developed, which was the multi-storey car parking, the student schemes along the Wessex Way, and the Citrus building, which again has helped to transform Horseshoe Commons. So we might have our disagreements about other aspects, but I don't think there's any version of reality where we can't be proud of the schemes that we've been delivering through our partnership with Bournemouth Development Company. Long-winded answer there, but I hope that answers a number of your questions. Councillor Green.
Thank you, Leader. It certainly helps answer some of mine. I'd just like to speak, I guess, probably in three capacities. The first is as a ward councillor to say, because all three of these are in our ward of Bournemouth Central, and the opportunity that all three of these offer is tremendous. And to look at something which does not, we are looking here at a decision without which the potential development of these three sites is going to be put back for years. And so I feel as a ward councillor that the opportunity loss would be very significant indeed if we don't take this forward. Eden Glen and the Winter Gardens are clearly right down in the centre by the seafront, with all the opportunities that has. Cotland and York Road, we are into our financial district, and the Lansdowne, as we've seen by the Lansdowne project, has opportunity to improve over the years. We've started that down that route, and we want it to continue. The second capacity is as the Cabinet Member for Transport, just commenting on those on the car parking and the town centre area action plan, which I think we're talking about from 2006, which is where these where the need figures have come from. And I think there's two parts to that. First of all, I'd like to point out, in the same way as with Beach Road, Eden Glen has many car parking spaces at the moment which are not compliant with current standards, and the opportunity is even there within the town centre area action plan requirement that it is not always, that public parking is not always replaced absolutely on site. Indeed, the example that you came out with earlier, Leader, on the Citrus building, and which has made a tremendous contribution to the area out Horseshoe Common, that was a car park. What we did is we took a pretty rubbishy car park, named Leighton Mount, I think it was called originally, what BDC did, and that car parking was reprovisioned with more at the award-winning multi-storey Madeira Road car park, literally only a couple of 100 yards up the road. So I think there are easy ways to accommodate within the policy. We also need to recognise, as time goes on, that particularly over the pandemic, people's need for car parking in business areas has changed. And while at the moment that is our policy, and I would support it as our policy within the town centre area action plan, I think we do need to be aware in the future that this may be something that we want to look at. My last and slightly less positive role is just as a decision maker here. And I think the key item that I picked up out of Councillor Bartlett's contribution is the interaction between Bournemouth Development Company and Future Places. And while I recognise completely that Future Places is the think tank for our regeneration around place within BCP, and as such it will be producing the business plans about which we've seen earlier and coming up with those ideas, some of them innovative, some of them more traditional, about how we can best use the space that we've got. BDC is the developer, and it will actually go out and make those plans a reality. Where I do think that Councillor Bartlett has got a real point is that there is potential for crossover between them, and I would like to be reassured when making the decision that there will be no duplication of work. That there is the opportunity to take 1 and 1 and equal 3 by making sure that they stick to their expertise as we go through, and make sure that they're hand in hand as they go through to ensure that we get the best possible outcome for it. But I would like the assurance that they will be doing that and not duplicating work as they go forward. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Councillor Green. Thank you for your additional points there. Having been around for quite a long time with all of this, it's well noted. I do agree on that last point. I have confidence that because of the ways of working and the relationship, and actually the real spirit of positivity that both Future Places and BDC together are entering these joint pieces of work, that we do have satisfaction about the potential duplication. However, I do think that there is room to strengthen sometimes perhaps the formality of our commissioning model. Chief Executive only in the last few days and I have been talking around ensuring that that as we're learning as we move forward with these new mechanisms, that we're reflecting on areas where we're doing well, areas we might wish to improve. And I think both of us agree that the commissioning model that we've got could be strengthened probably on the client side, which is actually the council side, to enable that we are crystal clear on what we expect from our partners, both BDC and Future Places, our expectations, so that there is that clarity and then that rigour about making sure that that is followed. I'm absolutely confident it's happening, but I do think it's incumbent upon us to make sure the structures are in place correctly. But thank you very much for your points, colleagues. We've got a recommendation in front of us to agree to the amend the option execution dates for Winter Gardens to September 2024, and the Eden Again and Cottons to September 2025. I see all those in favour. Great, that's unanimous again. I would also like to take this opportunity to pay a particular thanks to Sarah Longthorpe, who's been our long-standing director of, currently director of delivery and regeneration, but amongst other roles. Sarah, it's been an absolute pleasure working with you. I think tomorrow's your last day at the council. You're on to pastures new. I'm not going to say better because you've dumped us for somebody else. But no, in all sincereness, thank you for all of the work that you've done over a long period of time, your commitment to both Bournemouth Borough Council as well as BCP. Thank you personally for the really strong working relationship that we've had, particularly as we set up all of the new functions. And on behalf of the entire Cabinet, I wish you the very best in your new ventures. Thank you. Yeah, and please come in.
Thank you. You'll get me emotional, and those that know me very well know that I don't get emotional. Those words. Been an absolute pleasure to work, at Bournemouth and BCP. Huge amount of opportunity here, and scope for real change. And I wish you well in driving those plans forward in the future.
Thank you very much, Sarah. And a lot of the achievements that we've achieved are only possible due to your work. I think you've got a tremendous amount to be proud of. So thank you for all of that. Colleagues, we'll now move on to agenda item number 15, which is the Smart Place programme next next steps. Again, I'll be introducing this item. I think our Smart Place is one of those things that's gone under the radar, that we've got an incredible team led by Adrian Hale and others, and Ruth Spencer, who's just returned from maternity leave, who are doing a tremendous amount of work at putting forward, really pushing the boundaries of what we can achieve about bringing our place together in a more smart way. We've had updates on this in the past, where we've got a number of different investment plans that they've been progressing, and what I love about this paper is that we are now at the stage of bringing that together. We've had some, I think, pretty serious interest in potential investors that would be interested in getting involved in those what we kind of call smart place interventions. A number of them that the team have been working on. So this paper is to make a recommendation for Cabinet to conduct a formal procurement process to look at securing a smart place strategic investment partner, as well as potential exploration of a special purpose vehicle, so that we can harness the external investment that exists and look to finding the most appropriate way to bring back to Cabinet to then make a final decision. I could rattle on about this for forever, and colleagues will be grateful that I'm not going to, but I think the Smart Place team is one of the unsung heroes of our council, and some of the interventions that they are doing here have had the recognition of some senior government partners, such as Department for International Trade, the Departments for Bays and others, showing what can happen when we think a little bit more digitally and innovatively about our place into the future. And some of the work they're doing just as an example through our Towns Fund deal in Boscombe is already generating results. So this is all about taking that to the next level, securing that private investment, and with a formal procurement process to harness what is, I think, some very serious interest in all that they are doing. And I'll look to Councillor Nicola Green to second.
Thank you, Leader. Happy to formally second.
Great. I'll move to any questions from colleagues not in the room on this item. Councillor Butler.
Thank you, Leader. Yes, this has interested me right from especially the 5G element of this. Listed under the scope, 5G comes within the second element of wireless networks. And as you know, you actually led the call for evidence a few years back. But as part of that, it was actually highlighted that electromagnetic radiation is one element of 5G. And if it was a visible cloud, people would be really worried. And the thing that concerns me is that with wireless networks, there's no escape. There's no choice. You know, if you live in a place where you've got this network, you can't escape it. Just because we can't see it doesn't mean that we shouldn't consider it. We've already seen tall 5G masts going up across the area. Lots of concerns have come from local residents. The equipment that's kept, the cabinets actually emit noise and heat. They have fans to keep them cool. And our streetlights were replaced a few years back for the instalment, I think, of all this equipment further up on them, because they're so tall, they're often above the tree canopy. So that was all in preparation, I think, for this. And so the thing that is actually listed in the report here is it says there's no statutory responsibility or financial support to enable the full development of smart places within the UK. Now, I understand that BCP want to be leading in certain areas, but you know, sometimes it's a step too far. The other thing that's included is that there's the Internet of Things as well, which is a much broader scope, which I think a lot of people are concerned about as well. And the other thing is there's been no public consultation for the rollout. We haven't even had results of what the baseline and the results were in the pilot scheme in Lansdowne. So really that should be in the public domain. You know, it's a shame we haven't had the BCP news to tell us all this. But, you know, I am concerned about this element of this programme. Really does worry me. And some countries have actually banned 5G. So, you know, it's not just being, you know, old fashioned or not wanting to modernise.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you very much for your continued concerns in that area, Councillor Butler. As you referenced, I was really pleased to have, whilst in opposition, actually led the call for evidence on 5G, and where we considered all the evidence. I think we had, you know, firm assurance at that time that that, you know, was something that we weren't overly unduly concerned about, although we, you know, we had views on all sides from that. That we can all establish it's pretty ubiquitous out there now, and we're all, you know, still here. Not that I'm trying to, you know, negate any concerns. What I am really proud of as part of that piece of work, and this is where the Smart Place team got involved, was the constant monitoring of those levels. And we were the first ones to do this, because we were able to take that focus on that, we now have the constant monitoring of the outputs of these 5G signals, all of which are within marginal levels compared to the safe safety versions or whatever they are. So I think we've got the confidence of the rigor that we've got to that approach to give assurance to people. I think we've got to be careful of conflating different things. You know, we are not in control of 5G and the wider rollout, which does seem to be here to stay. What the Smart Place programme is actually doing is looking at making sure that we are on the front foot of the innovation in that area, and giving new companies that are interested in working in this field an area of a closed loop 5G system in order to essentially test and trial their technology. And we've seen a number of businesses move specifically to the Bournemouth, Christchurch and Poole area because of our ability, which I think was until recently unique, to be able to trial new technology. So we're not entering the 5G bigger field. What we are doing as part of this has been being on the edge of not just monitoring, but also making sure that companies can come and test that technology, and to make sure it's safe as well. So I actually think the work that we've been doing here helps rather than hinders that. But, you know, appreciate your ongoing concern in that area. I'm not seeing any other colleagues raising any comments or questions on this, in which case the recommendation in front of us is... Oh, apologies, Jane.
Apologies, Leader, I didn't put my hand up. Yes, I just wanted to come in and talk a little bit about the Smart Place programme in the context of where it's been used in the Towns Fund development, because in Boscombe, because the officer and the team for the Smart Place programme are based now, I think, in the hub in Boscombe, which is absolutely amazing to have them there, knowing the benefits that have happened in Boscombe, where the ducting has gone all the way through the precinct and it's going down to the pier and either side of the pier, ready for 5G to be inserted later on in the year or early next year. In the precinct, we've got free Wi-Fi, which has been absolutely welcomed by many residents, and also 5G for businesses is available as well. So we know that when we get further into the Boscombe Towns Fund development with the Royal Arcade part of the programme, the fact that we have 5G there is going to be so important in order to attract young businesses, creatives and digital companies to come and take advantage of that, because it's not something you get everywhere. So in terms of having the 5G and the Smart Place team available and developing, we're really, really pleased. We were also taken on a tour of the Lansdowne project, and pointed out that the monitoring of the levels in that area, we saw those monitors, and it was shown to us, and we could see that the levels of whatever it is that's there, because I'm not very good at this sort of thing, was almost unrecordable, so low. So I'm sorry, what is it? Thank you very much, Councillor Green. The technical bits go over my head slightly, but anyway, it was almost unrecordable. So we were our fears were put to bed and we were able to be confident that there was no danger involved. So really supportive of this programme. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kenny. Again, thank you for all your work on the Boscombe regeneration, of which is a crucial part as well. Councillor Johnson.
Thank you, Lydia. No, as lead member for Levelling Up, I'm also delighted to see this paper. It's got a real base within the Levelling Up agenda. It encourages pride in place, with the benefits extending out to those places that need it most. You know, the Levelling Up agenda has served us very well as a conurbation over the last 18 months, with the various funds, allocations and successful bids that come under that umbrella, now having contributed almost £50 million. And that's thanks to the hard work of officers and the other cabinet members sat around me here. So the council, using partnerships to their fullest to provide support for our area, matches perfectly well with our target Levelling Up goals, as well as the government missions. And I'll just touch on a couple of those. So goal number 10, which is closing the digital divide. It's much needed 5G work in this day and age where we are fighting so hard to eradicate inequality. The digital divide is the fastest and one of the only growing causes of inequality, as different generations in particular are dragged further apart in their access to now unavoidable technology that our society relies on ever more heavily. So it's very, very necessary work to make sure that we don't fall behind in that area. And goal number 12, which is building homes and sustainable communities. You know, investing in our communities and making them better will make them more attractive to those that live there and will hopefully encourage roots to be put down by our residents and create long-term grassroots community. So this paper is very much necessary to ensure we maintain the interest and partnerships with those who wish to invest in our places. So thank you, Leader.
Thank you very much again. Thank you for your work on the Levelling Up agenda. This is another central part of it, and it's great to see this in action. It's also great to see this paper harnessing the private investment as well, and making sure that we're not just saying, but we're doing, and getting others involved in that agenda as well. Kind of one final point on the electromagnetic side. I referred earlier to the page that people can go on to see that constant monitoring that Councillor Kelly referred to. That's via our Lansdowne webpage, where you can see that monitoring. I've actually got it on the screen in front of me. And to give some comfort to Councillor Butler and others, the standard limit that you'll be looking at is around 60 V/M. We all clearly know what that means. And I think the average value over the last month has been 0.8. So we are very, very far away. But I do think it was really important to do that and to show that constant monitoring, because it is a very real issue and a very, very real worry for people, particularly when they see new masks going up. So for us to be on the front foot and showing that these are, you know, definitively by that measure monitored and safe, hopefully gives that wider assurance as well. So thank you for the wider discussion. Colleagues, we've got the 3 recommendations in front of us for the Smart Place programme around procurement. Could have all of those in favour of those recommendations? Thank you. We've broken the back of the meeting, but we've still got a number of items to go. So I'm just going to recommend a 3-minute break, a comfort break, 3 minutes to keep everyone on their toes, Councillor Rampton. So for those joining us online, you'll see a holding screen and we're back in a moment. Thank you very much for those of us for bearing with us while we had a short comfort break. Then it has been unnecessarily longer than normal cabinet meeting due to the number of items that we're having to get through. So thank you very much for your continued patience. We'll now move on to item number 16, which again apparently I'll be introducing, which is around our housing aspirations, maintaining the momentum of our housing across the area. And this particular is about the PRS housing scheme at Surrey Road in Bournemouth. Colleagues will have heard me talk before about our CNAS programme, which is our council housing and acquisitions programme, which we only started a couple of years ago, and now has, our aspiration at the time was to try and get over 1,000 council delivered homes in train. Now in the extended pipeline, we're up to about 1,400. So I think we've surpassed our expectations there. And again, thank you to Nigel Ingram for bringing that forward and the continued work he's been doing on that wider strategy. What we've also had to do is react as the inflationary environment has changed and move the different programme around. So this, of our 44 different projects in that, this is site 17, had been brought forward from what was in the programme 5, the harder to reach site. So it's towards the end of the cycle and has now been moved forward. We approved it from on Cabinet in September 2021. This site was put in for planning permission in March 2022. We're hoping for a decision anticipated imminently. It has seemed to take rather a long time. That is just the way things are at the moment. And the recommendation here is to seek approval for the borrowing to progress on that scheme, to move towards subject to planning consent, the procurement of build works, and then to delegate to the Director of Housing in conjunction with Chief Financial Officer the authority to enter the contract for those build works. And this scheme itself is an 8-unit scheme, which again will be local homes for local people, because it will be rented homes that we'll be delivering. So happy to bring this forward. I'm really happy that the team continues to be agile with the programme, and I think that's a benefit about having so many of these projects in the programme. We've really moved forward in that title, maintaining the momentum, pushing forward some of the acquisitions or those that we know we can get on with at pace, and some of the bigger projects which are more affected by inflation, we moved a little bit further. So we're still able to keep that level of housing delivery aspiration going just by moving the programme and acting accordingly. So really happy to propose this, and I'll look to my colleague Councillor Karen Rapton to second.
Yes, thank you, Chair, and I'm very happy to second 8 very much needed homes, and I really like the fact that they are, they are sustainable is the word I'm looking for. You did touch on it, Chair, but I'm just going to have a whinge about the planning process, which has taken almost exactly a year and it still isn't decided. And there could very well be good reasons for that. And I know that there was Japanese knotweed, etc., and some trees that were subject to TPOs, I think. But I still think that when we're in dire need of renting, well, homes of all, all uses, these are particularly needed. They're larger homes, and to take almost a year is just completely unacceptable. And I really hope that that is moving forward very quickly, assuming that we are going to agree this today. But yes, supportive otherwise, Chair, but I just wouldn't like to see this sort of delay in future projects. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and points absolutely well taken on that. I'll move to colleagues not in the room for any comments or questions on this paper. I'm not seeing any hands. Colleagues on Cabinet that are in the room? No, I'm not seeing. In which case, I'll sum up. Agree with you on the planning point. We have been on and I've been overseeing with the Chief Executive the improvement programme of the planning department. We've got our interim director of planning, Sam Fox, in the room. And I do think vast strides have been taken forward with that. We're still not there, and I think this is another example of things sometimes taking too long, particularly when, as you've highlighted, not only are these local homes for local people, family homes as well. But with the build standards that we're going for, absolutely crucial for energy efficiency and our climate aspirations as well. So more of these, I think, is what we're aiming to do, and hopefully the extra funds and commitment we put into that planning process means that we can continue that work to make it much more streamlined in the future. Colleagues, we have the recommendations in front of us. Are all those in favour of progressing with that? That's great. Thank you very much, and that's unanimous. We'll now move to item number 17, and item number 17 is our long-awaited and really exciting culture strategy. And I'll move to Councillor Dunlop to fly the flag for culture.
Get me a trumpet off. I'll be all right. Thank you, Leader. Today's is really a high point for me as the portfolio holder for tourism and culture. What better way, I think, for our administration to demonstrate we've delivered than to bring forward these two significant papers coming forward today for culture and tourism. I guess the journey to this culturally has been quite long. It's sort of started out in Bournemouth Council, engaging with our major organisations, and a recognition that in order to realise the benefits of cultural engagement, there needed to be a partnership approach, and that culture is best served by the council sort of acting as a catalyst, providing support, seed funding and facilitating communities and partners and cultural providers to deliver this, so that we really can change the lives of our residents, bring people together, and drive cultural development. And that's sort of how the Cultural Compact was born. I just might explain what they actually are for those that, despite having a ridiculous name like a compact, it's a partnership that's designed to support the local cultural sector and enhance its contribution to development, with a special emphasis on cross-sector engagement that's beyond the cultural sector itself and beyond the local authority. What our compact does is brings the creative community together across arts and tourism, education, business, health and placemaking, to sort of provide that connectivity through infrastructure and provide opportunities in which culture can flourish. This particular report brings forward the first whole place cultural strategy for the region. It sets out a clear vision to establish us as a leading cultural destination, home to world-class art and cultural scene by 2032, and it neatly interfaces with our tourism strategy. It sets out our ambitions to boost culture over the next 10 years and responding to the three themes of talent, infrastructure and place, which was the output of the 2019 cultural inquiry. It's been developed with cultural groups, practitioners, studios, venues, artists and performers right across Bournemouth, Christchurch and Poole, all working together to create this strategy and create a more inclusive future for culture. So it provides a broad framework and a roadmap for the direction of travel. It's a very easy document to read, so I'm not going to start going through the detail, but I would like to pick out just a few things. As much as I'd like to talk about culture for the next 2 hours, as you all know, I'm just going to pick out a couple of things that I'd just like to draw people's attention to, and it demonstrates really the importance of cultural development. Some really simple stuff. For every £1 that's invested in culture, you get a return of £11. So it's pretty good. So every £1 that we've invested as a council, we've got that return. The digital tech sector, our digital tech sector supports 7,500 jobs, and it's the fastest growing sector in the UK. And these are one of the things that we need to think about when we talk about talent development, retention, infrastructure for that digital sector to grow. We've got 5 Arts Council national portfolio organisations. AUB is ranked as the top specialist art design university. And just a small thing that I think is really wonderful that shows how culture brings communities together. This year's Arts by the Sea Festival featured a carnival procession. It was amazing, but it brought together hundreds of people from our diverse communities, people from different nationalities, from minorities, all bringing their culture out into the street to share and for us to enjoy. Culture is everyone, and it's for everyone, and it's about connecting people through culture, and that I think has been my greatest aspiration whilst having this portfolio. The council has hosted and supported the compact since setting up in 2019, together with the Arts Council England. And in April, the compact will move to a new home at the Arts University. They will own and lead on this strategy, and will continue to be a partner by providing an enabling role in the shared ambition for culture as it takes on a new role. through the Cultural Compact. And as this is the last cabinet and I won't be taking these through council, I wondered if I could just ask for a little bit of indulgence. I'd just like to thank some of the people that have done all this work, if that's okay, and put it together. All those who have brought us to this point, people who've created our wonderful landscape, the MPOs, the culture providers, facilitators, artists, performers, and the Compact Board, Morag Wood, the chair, AUB, and last by no means least, if I may, Michael Spender, Andrea Francis, Andrew Emery, and Chris Saunders, who has now gone on to pastures new. Thank you, Leader.
One name on that off there, which is yourself, Councillor Dunlop, and again, particular thank you to all of the work that you've done as our culture vulture, as we'll call you. So, thank you very much. I'll move to Councillor Jane Kelly to second.
Thank you very much, Leader. And yes, I'd like to echo those comments about Councillor Dunlop and her passion for the cultural offer for Bournemouth, Christchurch and Poole has been unabated and impossible to suppress. So, not that we've tried. So, yes, this strategy document and the appendix absolutely demonstrates the energy and creative infrastructure that exists across Bournemouth, Christchurch and Poole in a really inclusive and diverse way. Access to cultural opportunities is essential for the health and well-being of our communities, and I think Councillor Dunlop has discussed that. To have an effective cultural compact to lead on the development of the cultural offer is absolutely fantastic benefit to all our residents, and I'm very confident that this strategy will form a strong basis as we go forward to enhance the range of opportunities for all ages and demographics, because that's really important that it's inclusive. Often arts and culture is said to be very exclusive, but it absolutely must not be. I think the partnership with Arts University Bournemouth is an excellent choice, as we have many other partners as well, but those will bring forward fresh ideas and forward thinking. I'm really pleased to see mentioned within the paper the old schoolhouse creatives in Boscombe. Boscombe is a really arts and culture based area and exhibits that very publicly in its many very colourful murals. So all in all, I am really, really pleased to second this paper. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you very much, Councillor Kelly. Right, I'll move briefly to those that are joining virtually for any comments or questions, and I'm not seeing any hands up. In which case, I'll then move to colleagues in the room for any comments or questions from Cabinet. Again, not seeing any, and that's certainly not to belittle the great work that's gone into this. So, what I would say, on behalf of everyone is thank you to you, Beverly, for all the work that you've done. Thank you to all of the partners that we work with. What I love about living in this area is that there are so many people that not just get culture, but are invested in making sure that it is a platform for us in our aspiration of being the wellbeing UK. It's absolutely something we should be focused on. We've got some great talent in the area, and what I'm particularly pleased to see in this recommendation is also the realization that it's not our job to do everything. It shouldn't be down to the council to be the leader on or the deliverer for every single aspect of this. We can be quite often the first mover, we can be the coordinator, but I think the work that's now going about moving the Cultural Compact to the Arts University for AUB to take that forward and secure the funding from the Arts Council to be able to do that, I think shows the part that we all play in culture moving forward, and again testament to the combined efforts of everybody for working towards that goal. Colleagues, all of those happy to approve those 4 recommendations in front of us, if we could show. Thank you very much indeed, and thank you to everyone for their work in that area. Something really to be proud of. One of the last decisions of this council is to approve that strategy. I think it's absolutely critical. We'll now move to item number 18, which is the climate programme, and I'll move to Councillor Mike Green to introduce.
Thank you very much, Leader. I'm actually going to start by thanking some people on this one. The climate action team has been truly superb over the last, well, certainly over the last 2 years since we boosted it up back then. And I'd particularly just like to draw attention to Neil Short recently, and absolutely to Matt Montgomery, without whom this council would be nowhere near as far advanced as we are on our involvement in tackling climate change and adapting to it on a local basis. So that's just in case I forget to do so later. But I'm really pleased to be able to bring this report to Cabinet. It is a bit different from how it's been in previous years, in that it's now in a 3-volume report, a 3-volume arrangement that we have within the programme. As in previous years, we have an annual report, which allows us to look back at what's happened over the previous the previous year, in this case 21-22, and there are certainly some highlights within that when we look at what we as a council have achieved. We can see that on our one of our 2 strategic targets remain relating to getting to net zero. One of those is that we wish to, as a council, have our operations emissions free by 2030, and I'm really pleased that on this one we can see that over the period from 2019 until 2022 we've already decreased those net emissions by 22%. Of course, there will be times that it becomes more difficult to do that. There will also be areas that we know that we can advance if we want to, but that trajectory is well on course. And again, I think it's a cause for celebration amongst us as an organisation that we've managed to achieve that one. The second strategic aim for net zero is that we're going to become a net zero area, as the whole conurbation in BCP should become net zero by 2050. And that is actually quite a difficult thing, not just to achieve, but even to measure, and the annual report reflects that. Its difficulties really brought down to 3 reasons. First of all, it is very difficult to actually get the data that we need to be able to show how we're progressing. Much of that comes from national sources. Some of it goes forward to various universities and various other bodies to produce, and that means that the most recent piece of information that we're sure of is the year 1920, so only just after BCP came into being. The second difficulty is, of course, with the pandemic that came through, that it changed our ways of lives, and it's our way of and the effects that it has on carbon footprint. So, for example, one might have expected that having fewer people in the offices would lead to a much lower carbon requirement for transport, and indeed for the offices themselves. But as we've found, even within our council buildings, actually it meant that although we had far fewer people in here, we need to keep all the windows open. And if you need to keep all the windows open, you need to keep the heating on. So unsurprisingly, when you look back at it, carbon emissions actually rose from heating and other emissions during that time. So we can see though the difficulties in being able to plot exactly what's happened. And the third and very important difficulty that occurs is that we become better and better in looking at how we might measure our carbon emissions. And that sometimes involves substantial methodology changes, and it certainly has in this case. So when we look at our progress up and from 2017 until 2020 for total emissions from BCP, we see that the carbon equivalent in headline terms has only gone down by 3%, which you'd have to say is disappointing. However, there has been a very substantial change in methodology, particularly how we look at the sequestration of land, the ability of land to store carbon. That's been changed at a national level, and actually, rather than 3%, if you do it on a like-for-like basis, measuring the same way, then we're looking at about an 8% reduction over the 1 year and a 12% reduction over the 3 years. So it actually is considerably better than one would expect on that. That's no, although it's cause for celebration, it's certainly no cause for complacency. We are not anywhere near the level of carbon emissions that we need to have reduced to hit either the 2030 or the 2050 targets. And so this, the other two documents are the way that we're going to try to do that. And it's only by looking at these three documents together that I believe that we're going to have the structure and the discipline to actually ensure that we do meet those targets. So the second document that you can see here, and which we're being asked to approve, is the Climate Action Plan. And in previous incarnations, what that's done is it's gone through and said, well, over the course of the next year, this is what we intend to do. But they've been a little bit woolly. And what we're doing this time, and we hope that will happen in the future, is to recognise that this is going to be a live document, and in particular, it's going to have a 2-year horizon. So each year, at least we would expect that refresh, and I'd expect it to come back to Cabinet each time. And that's the reason that we've looked at that, is because we think it's realistic to be able to put into place and to describe now the actions we'll be taking over the next 2 years, which are not reliant on changes in methodology. They're not reliant in innovations. They're not reliant on so much that will change over the course of us reaching the 2030 and 2050 targets. But those aren't the only changes that we've got for the annual reports. In particular, for the first time, they include the actual metrics by which we will be able to measure whether we've been successful or whether we haven't been successful, or whether we've only been partially successful in achieving those objectives that we had, and those actions get the tick or they don't get the tick as we go forward. And that again comes down to this idea of discipline, because while we've all been very much on the same page, and I'll speak a little bit more just towards the end about how we've worked well together as an organisation, it has been, there have been a lot of words in the past, and it's these metrics which will make sure that those words are being matched by actions. And the other thing that it brings in, which again I believe helps the discipline, is that for each of the themes and each of the actions that we have, there is a lead service that is identified. And that's quite bluntly, so no one can say, well, I was leaving it up to somebody else to get this done. It means that there's now the proper tie-in between the action plan this year and next year, and when we look in 12 months' time, or when somebody looks in 12 months' time at the annual report, they will be able to tick off those actions as having been completed. And I think that is absolutely essential if we're going to move forward in this way. There are tables within the action plans which determine which themes, which service, what we're intending to achieve. But to my mind, and this was described by one of the members at Overview and Scrutiny as me scrutinising my own paper, and I think that's a very fair thing to do, because I believe that future versions of the action plan should have another very important column against them, and that should be the actual carbon tonnes equivalent emission that we believe that action should save us. And that brings me to the third and potentially the most important volume that we have within this climate action programme, because the first time ever we are going to be introducing an overarching climate strategy. We often have spoken in the past about how climate action is going to be at the forefront of what we're going to be. It's going to be embedded within every action of the council. But there's been no way of enforcing that. There's been no way of saying, you know, this has to be in line because this is the strategy. And that is what the climate strategy will do. It'll do it by identifying the strategic aims that we've already spoken about on the net zero side, and also want to ensure that we adapt correctly to climate change and that biodiversity is considered in the correct way. But it will, within those themes, I believe that the climate strategy, which you have in draft form at the moment, should be talking either year on year or yearly for the next couple of years, and then a little bit spaced out as we go further forward. The actual carbon saving, we believe, is going to be necessary to keep us on track to meet those aims. And the tie-in there with the annual report is the annual report will show the individual actions saving carbon. There will be a requirement that the total of those savings, the carbon savings, fit what is in the climate strategy. And if they don't, then the answer is going to be you haven't got enough actions, or those actions aren't strict enough, and that will give a rigidity that there has never been. And actually, I don't believe, from having seen many of these action plans from around and strategies from around the country, I think we'll be an exemplar in the way that we put this forward. So, in the same way as the action plans in the future, I believe, will show particular carbon savings, I believe that for each of the 9 themes that are identified within the climate strategy, we need to have a proper trajectory as to where we expect those carbon savings to come from to achieve those twin objectives that we will have in the future. It should not just be a straight line. There are certain savings that we can make more effectively, quickly. The low-hanging fruit. There will be others which at the moment are difficult, but we know that the technology is coming along for us to be able to achieve those later. And no doubt the last few tonnes are going to be extremely difficult to squeeze out. So that's why we want to see those trajectories which show the amount of carbon that we're going to save and make sure that we hit that. And I hope and trust that as we go forward, the climate strategy will evolve into that. So what I'm asking Cabinet to do now is to approve the 2 reports, the annual report and the action plan, and to note the progress that we're making now towards the climate strategy. And I started off by thanking those that have been involved from the officer side. This has been an incredibly collaborative measure. Again, I point to one of the other members of the place scrutiny board, who said that when there was a change in administration, he had real fear that we would not be keeping up with track of what would happen to the climate agenda. He was then extremely complimentary about where we've got to. For an administration not to have speakers from the public on this subject at this stage before an election, I think shows that we have been able to work together with the public and together with our with councillors from all over the chamber, through particularly through the climate action member support groups that we set up to the different themes, but outside that as well. This has been a collaborative measure, and I would like to thank all those that have been involved right the way across the council, and indeed some of our external partners for getting us to the stage that we are. So with that, I'm going to move those recommendations, Lee.
Thank you very much, Councillor Green. Happy to second that. And you're absolutely right. There are no speakers from the public today, but you've been the voice for all of them, not just on this issue, but today as well. Look, I asked colleagues to try and keep comments brief earlier, but I am going to forgive you that extended explanation of all the work that's been going on for 3 reasons, Councillor Green. First of all, you're absolutely right. This is critical. We have declared a climate and ecological emergency. It's pretty central to all that we're we're doing, so it's important that we explore it in detail. Secondly, because as you pointed out, as evidenced by the recent overview and scrutiny meeting, this carries cross-party support, and I think indeed cross-party support for all of the work that you and your team have been doing. And thirdly, I'll forgive you because it's your baby, and actually as a final cabinet meeting, hopefully only for a little while, I think it's absolutely correct that you own this and own the incredible work that the team and yourself in particular has put into this. It is critical for our council operations, for our next generation, and I think nobody can argue that we haven't made significant progress in this area. So delighted to second on that basis. I'm going to move to colleagues that are not in the meeting to see if there are any comments or questions, bearing in mind that this has been extensively covered as well at the overview and scrutiny functions, and I'm not seeing any. Any other further comments from those in the room? Nope. In which case, I think I'll speak for all of us in thanking you for all your work on this. And again, thank you, as you pointed out, to colleagues such as Neil Shorten, Matt Montgomery. I think nobody can have any question that the climate credentials of this Conservative-led BCP Council are anything but as stellar as possible. So happy to take that to Cabinet. All those in favour to adopt that? Thank you very much indeed, and thank you for the work on that. We'll now move on to item number 19, which is a Two Rivers Meet Leisure Centre Energy Improvements business case, and I'll move to Councillor Kelly to introduce the item.
Thank you very much, Leader. And I could do a couple of thanks before I start to the team at the at Leisure, because they've been working very hard. The lady the officer that runs Rivers Meet Leisure Centre, and also, of course, as we've just been mentioning, Neil Short, who has worked on this as well, in terms of the climate change opportunities. So just want to say about this, we're really lucky here in Bournemouth, Christchurch and Poole. We have 9 leisure centres, all of which are well used and appreciated by our residents, increasing the health and well-being within our communities. But we've just one leisure centre which is run in-house, and this one, Two Rivers Meet, has won the South West England Prestige Awards Leisure Centre of the Year, that's a long one, in 3 consecutive years. We're so proud of this achievement and congratulate the team on their consistent hard work to also achieve an annual footfall of 300,000 visits, so that's 6,000 a week visits to that leisure centre, which is really amazing. And it's very hard work that keeps that going. So we are now, through the use of the Green Futures Fund, asking for £478,500 to replace the plant, install controls and energy monitoring system, and to replace the pool covers. The implementation of this project will save money in running costs and will also reduce the amount of greenhouse gas emissions, so contributing to climate change. The energy cost savings will amount to around £63,000 per annum, and the customer experience will be enhanced. This is through the improved control of the system, which gives the ability to optimise the system matching the operational requirements as they occur, and monitoring the water temperature and quality in real time. This excellent use of the Green Futures Fund represents a really fantastic opportunity to upgrade and modernise the centre, bring a financial return to the council, whilst also creating a platform upon which further renewable technology can be utilised in the future to further improve efficiency, for example PV panels, thus securing its sustainable future for our residents. So the recommendation today is that, I'm just going to go back to them. What am I doing? I'm in the wrong place. I'll just go to the right place. Colleagues, apologies. The recommendation is that the application to the Green Futures Fund, as previously approved by the Future Infrastructure Board, for replacement of plant, installation of controls, energy monitoring system and replacement of pool covers at Two Rivers Meet Leisure Centre for the sum of £478,500 be approved. So I do have officers available if technical questions would like to be asked by anyone, and I so recommend this to the Cabinet and seek a seconder, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Councillor Kelly. I'll move to Councillor Mike Green to second.
Thank you very much, Leader, and I will duly be much briefer this time, but it's really good that this is coming so close on the heels of the the climate action programme, because it really does advertise one of the great achievements I think that we've had in the last couple of years since this administration took over, when it looks at the climate programme, and that is to form this £20 million Green Futures Fund. And just to remind members, this is a fund that becomes available for infrastructure projects, but they have to be self-funding. And this is an ideal example of it, because even putting in our low risk 5% return, it is indeed doing that. So the money moves out of the Futures Fund to be able to do it, but it's getting repaid. And it's getting repaid over a 15-year period, principal plus the interest, to be able to replenish that fund and make it available for other projects as we go forward. As Councillor Kelly says, it will be saving money for the council taxpayer, and it will also be saving emissions, and therefore helping in our fight against climate change. And I just think it's useful to know, for a quick comparison, how much carbon emission we're saving on this one. And the answer on this alone, it's about 90 tonnes per annum that we will be saving. And again, I just want to put that into perspective, because given some of the many comments we had at the last council meeting and emails that have been flying to and from since, that's 40% of the emissions that come from the air displays at the Air Festival. Now let's look at what we can do. We only need, well, a couple more of those, and we've more than saved the emissions that come from all the air displays, etc. So let's get everything into perspective, and let's make it go forward on this sort of project. So I'm very happy to second.
Thank you very much, Councillor Green. Really well made point. I'll move to colleagues that are joining us virtually from Cabinet Plus or other colleagues not on the Cabinet. And I'm not seeing anyone. Any other comments or questions from those in the room? Not seeing any. The only thing that I would add is just to re-emphasise that point about the Green Futures Fund on the back of the last paper, which was around not just talking about climate action but doing something about it. You know, it is this Conservative administration that not only has really moved really turned the dial on our direct intervention on climate and putting the primacy of that forward, but that £20 million Climate Capital Green Futures Fund is exactly, I think, a very Conservative way of dealing with climate change. It's bang for the buck. It's using capital funds to really make a difference, and it is actually about not just talking about things but actually investing in things that are going to have real results. And the fact that we're using this not only to, as you point out, save an absolute ton or multiple tons of carbon, but also to support one of our award-winning leisure centres is, I think, something we can all be proud of, and exactly what that fund was designed to do as well. So great work to everyone involved. I'll move then to Councillor Kelly to sum up.
Thank you very much, Leader. Turns out we didn't really need officers because we have this climate change expert within our midst. So I'm very grateful to Councillor Green for those extra figures that he put into this. And yes, I'm so excited about this project. It's going to revolutionise the way that Two Rivers Meet can work. And I know that all the members there are going to be very, very grateful that that those improvements will be there, pretty soon. So thank you.
Thank you for your work on this, Councillor Kelly. I'll then take it to the vote. All those in favour of the recommendations as they stand, please show. Thank you very much, and that is carried. Thank you very much. Really exciting time for Two Rivers Meet Leisure Centre. We'll now move to item 20 on the report, which is a Day Opportunity Strategy Case for Change report, which will be led by Councillor Rampton. Karen.
Yes, thank you very much, Chair. And I will be really brief and try and set a good example to certain other people here. So this is the Case for Change report, and it's been developed through a range of evidence seeking, and that includes public consultation, strategic needs assessment, but most importantly, through working in a very much a co-produced way with families, carers, people who use our services and wider stakeholders, including advocates, voluntary sector, just to name a few, and myself and other members who are probably present on the call are part of that working group. So there are 6 key priorities and proposals to implement over the next 5 years. So what this paper is not, it's not the strategy. That will come later. This is the stage 4 in the process. So for example, what needs to change and not how to change it. It's ambitious. It recognises the needs and desires of many to move away from mainly building-based Monday to Friday, 9 to 5 model, and to have a mixed model which does support that buildings-based service for people who need the structure and the support of a day centre or a hub, but also an alternative offer which could be community-based. And you know, as we know, day opportunities should meet the needs of our residents who use them. We want them to be happy. We want them to be fulfilled, to be healthy and active, and to live lives which are as independent as possible. My colleague, Councillor Kelly, mentioned ABCD, asset-based community development, earlier, and this is very much a way of incorporating that sort of community involvement in creating something which is it's not one size fits all. It's something for everybody. Just like to sort of emphasise that no decisions have been made about any existing service or any existing building, but there are a plethora of options which could be considered in the next stage should Cabinet approve this paper. So there are 6 strategy design priorities: transport costs, including access to personal budgets, employment, day opportunities provision, again, as I say, that mixed model, accessible information, and day opportunities standards, making sure that our services are fit for purpose. And I'd really like to see those creative opportunities developed, and travel training. I've seen this in action. It's one of my jobs when I worked for the preceding Pool Council many years ago, and I travel trained adults with a learning disability. And to see the difference that being able to get out and about independently made to the lives of people, enable them to access friends, services, just to do the things that sometimes we take for granted, is absolutely incredible. I'd love to see the support going across 7 days. I'd love to see it more person-centred, and particularly want to see a focus on supported employment where it's appropriate for the individual, because I think, to be frank, we can thank you, Councillor Johnson. I will sum up very quickly. We can do much better in terms of our supported employment offer, and I'd really like to see that developed. But of course, all of this is subject, as I say, to that co-produced work with people who use the services and their carers and other stakeholders. So the options appraisal, paragraph 62, option 3 recommended, and I would recommend that option to Cabinet. And I'd also like to reassure Cabinet that once this is agreed, if it's agreed, it's going to be full steam ahead with that joint approach to work out the day opportunity strategy, which would come back to a future Cabinet. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Caroline. Thank you for the love in the room. There's a lot of affection around this table, a little bit. And thank you again for your work on this. Is again a really, really important piece of work. I'll move to Councillor Kelly for 2 seconds.
Oh, thank you, Leader, and I am so pleased to second this paper. We've got a wonderful group of residents who are becoming mature in years, perhaps, and or suffering, present company accepted, of course, and or perhaps suffering from long-term disabilities of various sorts. And they all really appreciate the opportunities that our day centres offer and have done for many years. And the companionship and the opportunity to learn new skills or take part is so important to very many people. We need to ensure that the centres that we have are efficiently and effectively used to ensure their sustainability for the long term. But also these social groups and gatherings can be more easily often and effectively run in community centres or even in people's private homes when appropriate. So for the second time in this Cabinet meeting, we are again talking about building on our strength-based community development work. It's so important to enable people to live active, healthy and fulfilled lives for as long as possible, living independent of services. by taking part in community-based activities. So, and all these things prevent isolation and loneliness, and also increase people's sense of health and sense of well-being. Really important for a long and healthy life. So I absolutely agree with Councillor Rampton about the need for these opportunities to be co-produced and absolutely agreed with by the service users, the people who are actually going to be doing these things and undertaking these activities. So I'm very happy to second this paper. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you very much, Councillor Kelly. I'll now move to colleagues that are not joining us in person today who may wish to speak on this item. I've got Councillor Diana Butler.
Thank you, Leader. Just to say thank you very much to Kevin Gillings, who has been chairing and organising the co-production group, which has been a really good group. And it's ensured that lots of people have been able to put their ideas and preferences forward. So thank you very much to him.
Thank you very much, Councillor Butler. Yeah, well noted. I'll just see if Councillor Jackie Edwards is there, because I think she did want to speak on this item, but I'm not seeing. Is this the point you wanted to talk, Jackie?
Yes, if I can, thank you, Chair. Yes. Yeah. Well, members of the Health and Adult Social Care Overview and Scrutiny Committee felt that this was a good time to look at modernising the different opportunities that are available. And yes, and thanks goes to Kevin Gillings for the report. Many questions were asked, and members assured that this was not just about saving money, but by listening to stakeholders, that there was a greater variety will be available for all users of this service, and this will include both building-based and digital offerings, and information on the opportunities will be available in different formats. So the committee supported the 3 recommendations to the Cabinet.
Thank you very much, Councillor Edwards, and again, thank you to the work for your committee in looking at that as well. I'm not seeing any other hands for those not in the meeting. Are there any other comments or questions for those in the meeting? Just one from me, I suppose, is again, really vital piece of work, and there's just something in there, isn't there, about this working with the community for a community-led approach on so many of these things. I think one of my constant reflections about the positives that may well have come out of the pandemic was the re-emergence of a tremendous amount of people prepared to volunteer, get stuck in with their local communities. Thousands of people came out of the woodwork in the Together We Can programme that we brought together, and I know a number of us said at the time, let's not let that go to waste. Let's continue to use the great resources we've got, people resources, community skills, and that real positive will of the community to try and help those in need as well. And I think that putting that into the mix here and looking to do things differently is critical to the success. So, credit to the team for their work in that and this project. Councillor Rampton, I'll leave for you to sum up.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'd just like to thank people who have spoken for their positive comments, and I'd like to offer thanks to Kevin, who has really done a fantastic job on this. But I'd also like to thank Siobhan and Joe Connell. And Joe's, for people who don't know, Joe's leaving us, and so thanks to him for all his hard work on it, and of course to our Phil Hornsby, who's in the room today. It's a really good paper. A lot of work and a huge amount of time, and this sounds, it's not meant to sound discriminatory, but when you do co-production, it does take longer to do, and you have to spend that time. You have to give people time to, to think things through and to come back with their comments, and that has been done so effectively and will carry on being done, I would imagine. So thanks to all, and I'm hoping that we can have a decision, Chair.
Great. So at that point, I'll put the recommendations as stated to Cabinet, and all of those in favour, please show. Thank you very much. That's unanimous. Thank you very much for that one. Only a few more to go, girls and boys, but important ones. So we'll now move on to the tourism strategy, and again, I'll bring in Councillor Beverly Dunlop to talk all things tourism. Thanks, Bev.
Thank you, Leader. I think I might get this one out before I expire from my cold. Yeah, before you is another significant strategy that I'm very proud to deliver that will determine the direction of travel for tourism in the coming years and enable us to leave tourism a good place with an exciting future. You don't need me to tell you that this area has long been associated as one of the premier coastal visitor destinations, award-winning beaches. I'm not going to go through all the benefits. We all know them. We know what they are, and we all know I could talk about them forever. The tourism sector is a key contributor to the local economy. Over 8.8 million day visitors every year and 1 million staying visitors to the area in 2021. These visitors spend over 570 million locally, supporting 12,000 jobs and generating over 1.3 billion in business activity a year. The councils in the tourism sector were responsible for the seafront parks, the countryside, the piers, pavilion, leisure centres and all the galleries. The tourism team were also responsible for the direct delivery of major events, festivals, air festivals, Christmas Tree Wonderland, our new Pool Christmas Maritime Festival, and providing over 1,000 events a year. And these operations deliver a significant financial surplus each year. I think it's very clear that tourism is worth a huge amount to this area. The Destination Management Board exists to bring together the key stakeholders from across the sector, including the cultural sector, provide a steer, and it informs the development and direction of these activities, including the destination marketing and the events. So although we've led for many years, the legacy councils have led and owned this strategy, it's always been a collaborative approach. And these stakeholders include the 4 business improvement districts, BAHA, which is the Area Hospitality Association, who represent the hotel sector, education, conferencing, our language schools, transport and other hospitality representatives, and then joining them to create those links, as we talked about earlier with future places, and I talked about the Cultural Compact. Got Moira Wood, chair of the Cultural Compact, has joined that board, and also representation from future places. As I say, historically, the council has owned and led the tourism strategy, but this new strategy sees a shift towards it being industry-led and owned, and it's partly driven by government changes to the destination management structures across England, but also because we recognise that these are the experts, these are the businesses, these are the employers, these are the people that drive our economy, the people who actually have skin in the game. It's for them, it's about, putting a roof over the head, food on the table, providing jobs and attracting investment. And this strategy has been developed in collaboration with them. They very clearly fed into it. They have tailored it around the way that they want to go forward. Again, I'm not going to go through the report. As everyone's flagging, it's easy to read. It has really clear priorities in it, and it has the actions and outcomes of the development of tourism over the next 5 years, and with the council collaborating the development of those delivery plans and supporting the goals. So that's really it from me. But again, I would really like to thank all our tourism partners. As I've said, these are the people that make things happen. They attract investment, they provide jobs, and they're part of us having a wonderful area to attract people. And some special thanks, if I may, to some of the people in our tourism team. That would be Stevie Sainsbury, Sam Richardson, John Weaver, and again, Andrew Emery, if I may. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you very much, and delighted to second this one as well. Again, I think it's a fitting way for this last cabinet meeting to really land this tourism strategy. We've heard a lot from others that tourism isn't the be all and end all for the BCP region. Of course, it's absolutely not, but it is a critical part. It's a critical part to our local economy. It's a critical part to a lot of people's jobs. It's a critical part, incidentally, to our enjoyment as residents of the area as well, because it is from that investment that we get from the tourism sector that we have our 15 15 miles of amazing coastline and all of the all of the associated tourism-based stuff that we can enjoy as residents as well. So it's absolutely critical to our economy as well as to our enjoyment of this place that we call home. And again, I think this is a really welcomed strategy, and the fact that it has been co-developed, as you pointed out, with that destination management board. Let's be clear, that's not the council. That's people in the industry that are stepping up to be leaders in that area, and it is quite often business and the industry themselves that know best about what they want. And our job here as the council is to help facilitate that. And I think that's precisely what we're seeing with this emerging strategy. So really delighted to second this. Thank you to all of your work and those that you've mentioned as part of that agenda as well. And again, as we move forward to the summertime, a couple of reflections that I've got is we talked earlier around the outcomes of the corporate peer challenge that we had, and the singling out not only of the work in this sector but also the critical work that this administration has done on summer resilience, making sure that we are open for business, we're resilient in that, and the investment that we put in makes our area safe and welcoming for visitors. And we've been credited with that approach by those outside observers, and also in our most recent council meeting, I think the support that we have offered for, just as an example, of the Bournemouth Air Festival, and only 6 months time away from that, and the saving of that in our budget to give that commitment to not just the tourism sector but also those who enjoy, that we will continue to invest in our area. So thank you to the work that you've done, and thank you to the work for everybody in supporting the sector. I'll move to colleagues that are not in the room for any comments or questions. I'm not seeing any. Any further points or questions from colleagues on Cabinet? No, in which case, any further points to sum up? Councillor Dunlop, happy? In which case, congratulations to you. Congratulations to all of the team on this new and improved tourism strategy. We've got a recommendation to approve the adoption of that from Cabinet, and I'll ask all those in favour to show. Great. Thank you very much indeed. Another genuinely exciting one, and for those of you that are still with us and watching, it is one of those documents really worth reading. I think it really highlights the level of aspiration, not just for the council but for the whole region, this really important sector. We'll move to the last of the major items on the paper, which is the LTP Capital Programme 23-24 and Programme for Developing Local Transport Plan 4 paper, and I'll go to Councillor Mike Green to introduce.
Thank you very much, Leader. No more than 2 or 3 hours on this one, I can assure you. This report comes in, there's 2 parts to it. The first is very familiar to anyone who's been along to one of these cabinet meetings at this time of year. It's about the annual grant that comes from the Department for Transport and needs to be agreed with that department for both transport network related activity and the highways maintenance routine, both of which we receive funds from government, which are then ours to spend, but only in the way that they have been agreed. In 22-23, it was 7.9 million that we received. 4.8 million of that was for highways management, and 3.1 for the integrated transport block. And our assumption is, based on what we've heard from them, that they will be identical for the next 2 years as well, and that's what's assumed in here. Normally we are pretty accurate on that one, and we expect that the final award sometime over the next couple of weeks or so. And as I always say at these meetings, there's really not a lot of choice of what we can do. There is the integrated transport block, but that is about schemes and projects which have been in many cases going on for a number of years, and which again are continuation of those that have been fully or partially funded by the Department for Transport. And again, within the recommendations A, B and C, it talks about that programme. The second part, the 4.8 million that goes on highways highways maintenance. Again, we are absolutely straitjacketed on this. We have a highways asset management strategy from which we get our plan that comes from that, and it is all about inspection routines, and whichever ones come out at a certain level, those we have to mend first of all. If we were to do different from that, then we would have our funding reduced in quite a drastic measure. So really, that's quite a very usual and not very exciting part of the report. There is a second part which has got the last two recommendations in it, which recognise that the current local transport plan that's put into action between ourselves and Dorset Council runs from 2011 to 2026. So we do have a requirement by the end of next year to have replaced that with the local transport plan 4. And the last two recommendations are, and the stuff that comes is written in the report about them, reflects the fact that we're expecting guidance from the DFT. It has been delayed, but we are told that it's going to be this spring on what we have to put together and the approach that we should take for our new local transport plans, which will go beyond 2026, probably for another 15 years, and that we need to have that completed by 2024 or risk all the funding that we receive. Appendix D includes in it the proposed governance arrangement, which is between ourselves and Dorset Council, both at an officer and member level, including cross-party working group. And recommendation E is that we start that work. Now, in fact, recommendation E, as it's written in the report, says that Cabinet recommends to Council that we start on that work, but there is in fact no reason for this to go to Council. It is just to say starting that work, and so I'm going to amend that recommendation E as I put it forward to delete the words Cabinet recommends to Council, and so E will just start that work commences on development a refreshed joint local transport plan. That's all I have on that, and I will seek a seconder on it.
Thank you very much, Councillor Green. Again, thank you for all your work in this area. I'm happy to second this and agree with the amendment as well. Again, you know, the work that's been done, I think just collectively across our transport plan has moved tremendously since since the inception of BCP. You know, we know that we have congestion problems. We are one of the most congested areas in the country, and we have to do something about it. And whether it be the Transforming Travel programme, whether it be the work through the transport plan and many other ways, I think we're tackling that, encouraging people to, you know, your travel, your choice, get around how they can, encourage people where they can travel more sustainably. And again, I'd like to put on record my thanks to you as the Cabinet member for this area, not only leading the charge, but I think being almost single-handedly often responsible through your work with the Western Gateway and others for some really chunky funds that we receive from government in this area. We have to take this seriously. We have to show leadership, and I think you've done that you know, with great aplomb, and that's why we've been able to push forward a lot of these areas. So I'm delighted to second on that basis. I'll move to colleagues that are not on the in the meeting to see whether there's any questions or comments for Councillor Green on this paper. And I'm not seeing any. I'll then move to colleagues in the room for any further final comments, in which case I'll pass to Councillor Green. Any summing up?
Nothing to add. Thank you, Peter.
Great, in which case we will move to the recommendation as it stands, and we have recommendations A to E. All of those in favour? And that is unanimous again. Thank you very much. Colleagues, that brings us to the end of the agenda items proper. I'll move to agenda item 24, which are urgent decisions taken by the Chief Executive in accordance with the Constitution. I'm advised that there are one. Chief Exec, do you want to read that item out?
Yes, just very briefly, that was the decision to accept the Household Support Fund for £5.3 million, which is now being distributed. That was allocated from the Department for Work and Pensions.
Thank you very much. We always love it when the urgent decisions are to take money, receive money, not take money. So thank you very much for doing that, Cabinet. Happy with that. Great. Agenda item 25 is the Cabinet Forward Plan. We have had the latest version of the Forward Plan, which has recently been published, a copy of which has been circulated as a supplement to this agenda. Everyone on Cabinet happy with that? Great. In which case, before I close the meeting, some final comments as the last meeting for this term. First of all, it's been the honour of my life to be the last leader of the first term of of BCP Council, and to have one of the smartest and kindest people I know sat behind my side. So thank you very much to my deputy, Nicola Green. It's been, yeah, and Sarah, she's on my other side as well, also smart and kind. It has been, you know, a great honour. I was also reflecting recently that I think I have been to more cabinet meetings through the BCP Council's existence than anybody else, having been the chairman of Overview and Scrutiny and attending every cabinet since its inception, and then being deputy leader and then leader. So it's been an honour, I think, to be at almost every single one of these meetings. But in all sincerity, I'd like to pay tribute to all of those members of all colours and none who have served on cabinet throughout this time. There's been a tremendous amount of work from the inception of BCP Council all the way through to where I think we're getting to now, which is a steady state, ambitious future. And I think it's a credit to everybody that served on cabinet, the time and effort they put in leading their respective departments, bringing the papers through, and doing so with a great degree of talent from wherever that came from. So thank you, not just to those in this room, to those who have served in the past from all parties. A particular thank you to them. I think it's also worth in this meeting thanking the former leaders of BCP Council as well, both Councillor Vicky Slade, the first leader, as well as Councillor Drew Mellor. Again, collectively a lot of work has been done. Some we may agree with, some we may not agree with, but we are here today, I think, with a really firm agenda, a clear direction of travel, and actually BCP Council being very much on the map. I think also I'd like to pay tribute to all of the people, whether it be cabinet members, colleagues and officers, on the journey that we've taken over the last 4 years. Those of us that were involved pre the local government reorganisation know what a mountain of effort it was as the first of the new wave of unitaries coming through, being a brand new council. That seemed like a gargantuan effort then. Of course, there's been even more effort to getting the council set up, finding its new identity, finding its new culture, finding its ways of working, and then getting to the position that we are now. I think we've got a lot to be proud about. I think there's been a tremendous amount of work that's gone on, and I think we can stand up and be proud of being one of the 10th largest councils in the country, as we've seen from the financial update. Despite some serious headwinds, a medium-term financial position that is now looking healthier than ever before, and a really clear agenda through our corporate strategy and a big plan as to exactly what place the Bournemouth, Christchurch and Poole region should be. And as I said it before, our long aspiration, which I think is really well made, of being the wellbeing capital of the UK, something I think we're firmly on the road to achieving. So thank you to the Chief Exec, to the officers throughout the council, thank you to our stakeholders, thank you to everyone that served on cabinet. And at that point, I'll formally close the meeting. Thank you very much.